Who are you?
I'm Bob.
Who sent you, Bob?
Nobody.
You're so much like your mother.
And coming in at number 10, Vanish. Image Comics seems to be going back to its gritty, magical roots with Vanish. Vanish follows Oliver Harrison. This chosen one peaked at the age of 14 when he took down the leader of the biggest threat to his universe in a mystical place called the Everkeep. Now, as an adult, this chosen one indulges in every vice he can, living a mediocre, pretty sloppy life. Until a group of heroes show up called the Prestige, who are actually the followers of the threat that Oliver took down when he was 14. Now, using his magical abilities, Oliver takes it on himself to play the part of a hero in the disguise of a villain to bring down the heroic Prestige. The comic builds up this super cool, magic but violent world. It's incredibly gritty but filled with dark fantasy and magic, and it's just so cool. Number 9, Rogue Sun. Dylan Siegel has been living life with his mom when he's suddenly called to a reading of his estranged father's will. Now, during that reading, he discovers his dear old dad was a superhero called Rogue Sun, and now Dylan has been granted the superhero mantle for himself. Now, this super angsty teen is in charge of protecting our world from the forces of the supernatural, while also trying to figure out who exactly took down his dad. The art in this story is awesome, and Rogue Sun's suit is incredibly cool. With really cool fire-based abilities and a whole lot of family drama, Rogue Sun from Image Comics is a fun story you should definitely check out.
Number 8, Asharid Het. Asharid was the son of an ex-Jedi Knight named Sharid Het, who had exiled himself to Tatooine and became a Tusken warlord. Asharid was trained by his father in the ways of the Jedi independently from the original order, as well as the ways of the Sand People who had adopted them. When he was 15, he slayed a Krayt dragon, and once his father was slain by the bounty hunter Aurra Sing, he joined the Jedi Order and was trained by Ki-Adi-Mundi and Anya Kuro. Despite being a human, he was known for wearing traditional Tusken face coverings and wielded 2 green lightsabers, his own and his late father's. He eventually became a Jedi Knight and was a fierce and cunning warrior during the Clone Wars. He was paired up with Anakin Skywalker, which was awkward due to Anakin's experience with the Sand People in Attack of the Clones. Anakin vented his frustrations by pretending that his enemies in a battle were Sand People and brutally cutting them down. In his madness, he attacked Asharid, who was armed only with a gaffi stick. Asharid disarmed Anakin, revealed he was human, and told Anakin that he would keep his dark secret. Now, let me say that again so you understand how impressive that is. He was attacked by a lightsaber-wielding Anakin Skywalker, who even at this young age was considered one of the best duelists and most powerful Force users in the Order. He had a stick, and he defeated and disarmed Anakin. He was eventually made a Jedi Master and managed to survive Order 66, which is obviously pretty rare and impressive. He returned to Tatooine and became a Tusken warlord and eventually turned to the dark side, becoming the Dark Lord of the Sith after Palpatine's death. As Darth Krayt, he was even more powerful and relentless, but even during his time as a Jedi, he was one of the strongest members of the Order. Number 7, Nomi Sunrider. Nomi was the wife of a man who was training to become a Jedi Knight. This obviously doesn't gel with the whole no attachments thing that caused Anakin and Padme so much trouble, or the whole trained from birth element of the Jedi, but keep in mind, this character was introduced in 1993, almost a decade before these elements of Jedi training were revealed in the prequels. When her husband was killed, she decided to become a Jedi herself. She was essential in ending the Freedon Nad uprising on Onderon, and was one of the many Jedi to fight in the Great Sith War against Exar Kun. When fighting Exar's apprentice Kel Droma, she used the Force to sever his connection to the Force, thus ending the war. She rose through the ranks of the Order and eventually became one of the most revered Grand Masters of the Jedi Order. Number 6, Seba Sabatine. Seba was a Barabel who was trained to be a Jedi Knight on her home planet independently of the new Jedi Order. She trained several Padawans on her own planet, which were known as the Wild Knights. When the Yuuzhan Vong War broke out, she took her forces and joined Luke Skywalker's Jedi Order, being one of the most essential players in the conflict. At the war's conclusion, she was made a Jedi Master. During the Dark Nest Crisis, she successfully dueled a Sith, which although Obi-Wan would claim that Sith Lords are Jedi's speciality, This is statistically extremely untrue, with only the most capable Jedi being able to go toe-to-toe with a true Sith. She was the one who trained Leia as a Jedi before joining the Jedi High Council. She was a key warrior in the Second Galactic Civil War, when anti-Jedi sentiment, fostered by Galactic Alliance Chief of State Nasari Dalla, caused Luke to be exiled. Sabo became the new Grand Master of the Order, deposing the Grand Master Dalla had installed. She then led a coup against the corrupt Chief of State. After this, Luke took the Order back and Sabo was made one of the Triumvirate, the group that replaced the position of Chief of State in the Galactic Alliance. She also personally defeated one of the avatars of the dark side entity Abeloth, helping Luke save the galaxy yet again. Number 5. Satele Shan. Satele Shan is the descendant of the lead characters of my favorite Star Wars story, Knights of the Old Republic, Revan and Bastila Shan. Being descended from some of the GOATs, she is naturally an extremely powerful Jedi of the Old Republic era, leading both Jedi and Republic forces during the Great Galactic War, with her arrival turning the tide of the Battle of Alderaan. She is an extremely skilled duelist, having defeated the Sith Lord Darth Malgus. She was called by the Force on an odyssey across the galaxy, which led her to discovering the long-lost Jedi Order homeworld of Tython. For achieving this, she was named the new Grand Master of the Jedi Order. She led Republic forces to victory against the Sith Emperor, who planned to end all life in the galaxy, and later actually teamed up with Darth Mar in order to defeat the fanatical cult that had been inspired by and was now being led by the spirit of her ancestor, Darth Revan. Number 4. Kyp Durron. Kyp Durron was one of the first students of Luke Skywalker's Jedi Order, outpacing his fellow Padawans in a matter of weeks when he began his training relatively late. He became hungry for the knowledge of the Force and was possessed by the ghost of the Sith Lord Exar Kun, who boosted his powers to be able to defeat Luke. He went on a rampage against surviving Imperials using the doomsday weapon the Sun Crusher. His position was ended with Luke's help, and he began a quest for redemption that made him one of Luke's best pupils and one of the first Jedi Masters of the New Order. Against Skywalker's wishes, he led the Jedi to war against the threat of the Yuuzhan Vong in the near-apocalyptic war for the fate of the galaxy, which he saw through to victory before becoming one of Luke's leading advisors on the Jedi High Council. He was also a key player in the Second Galactic Civil War when Darth Caedus took control of the government. Kyp was one of the strongest Jedi in the history of the Order and was Luke's prize student, with some believing he was even more powerful than Luke himself. Number 3. Meetra Surik. This is a Jedi Master you actually might be more familiar with than you realize. In Knights of the Old Republic 2, you play as a character known as the Jedi Exile. The race, gender, and name of the character are determined by the player in the context of the game, but canonically, this character is Meetra Surik. Meetra was a Jedi Knight who followed Revan to battle during the Mandalorian Wars, eventually becoming a general. Her actions at the Battle of Malachor V ended the war in the Republic's favor, but resulted in the deaths of many soldiers on both sides of the conflict. She was expelled from the Jedi Order, but eventually returned during the Dark Wars and defeated 3 Sith Lords, Darth Nihilus, Darth Sion, and Darth Traya. She reformed the Jedi Order and was given the rank of Jedi Master. After this, Meetra left in search of the long-missing Revan to help him defeat the Sith Emperor, who was planning an invasion. They attacked the Emperor, but were betrayed by their ally, Lord Scourge, resulting in her death. Despite this, she continued to help the Republic cause, keeping Revan company as a Force spirit while he was kept in stasis for years, and leading other Jedi Knights to rescue him and help him defeat the Emperor before she left to become one with the Force. So, my point is that Meetra can be killed, but she can't be stopped. Number 2. Lord Hoth. Remember during Phantom Menace when Qui-Gon Jinn is telling the Council that he thinks Darth Maul is a Sith Lord, and they all scoff at the idea, saying that the Sith have been extinct for almost 1,000 years? Well, the reason they were extinct for almost 1,000 years was the Jedi Master known as Lord Hoth. Hoth joined the Jedi Order with the explicit goal of single-handedly ending the Sith threat. And he didn't let anything stop him from achieving this. He became the Battle Master of the Jedi Temple, as well as the Supreme Commander of the Republic military. He led his forces against the Sith Lord Skir Khan during the New Sith Wars, surviving harsh conditions, low supplies, and the dwindling morale of his forces. When he discovered that the Sith was planning on unleashing the dark side power known as a Thought Bomb to end the lives of everyone rather than face defeat, Hoth confronted him and sacrificed himself. He died, but he accomplished his goal, and the Sith didn't return for almost 1,000 years, ensuring centuries of peace for the galaxy. Number 1. Coleman Trebor. Coleman Trebor was a Verk from the planet Sembla, who was considered one of the greatest Jedi of the Republic era. He had considerable diplomatic abilities and was known for his ability to peacefully settle interplanetary disputes without ever drawing his lightsaber. Due to his species having 360-degree vision, he was also one of the Order's best lightsaber combatants. When Chancellor Palpatine was almost assassinated by a group of assassin droids, he and Shaak Ti took out all of the droids without being scathed. He was made a Jedi Master and member of the Council after the death of Yarael Poof. During the Battle of Geonosis, he defeated several Geonosians and battle droids and was able to use his impressive Force stealth powers to sneak up on Count Dooku and attack him. Okay, to be honest, I ran out of time writing this and didn't get a chance to finish reading his Wikipedia article, but unless he was killed like embarrassingly easily by someone right after this, I'm totally confident giving him the title of the most unstoppable Jedi Master in all of Star Wars.
Number 10. Draculina. To be clear, when we talk about heroes you've never heard of, we're more talking about those that sit on the outskirts of the superhero fandoms, so you won't find them likely on the big screen or on DC's or Marvel's main teams like the Justice League, Avengers, or the X-Men. Instead, these are heroes who come from a more humble background by comparison. Some of them may have been simply forgotten due to just how long they've been around, whereas others typically are associated with smaller or even in some cases now defunct publishers. Coming from the world of fellow indie hero Vampirella, Draculina is sort of Ella's adopted sister and also kind of her ex-lover or ex-one-night stand. There have actually been at least 2 different Draculinas, possibly 3 at this point. One is Lilith's biological daughter and the biological twin sister of Vampy, who is blonde. The other one, the one I'm focusing on, who was once Vampy's lover, became obsessed with her and was eventually adopted by Lilith to become the new Draculina. If you want to learn more about her and other Vampy adjacent characters, Sacred 6 is a pretty cool comic that I would recommend that you check out. Or you can learn more about this version of Draculina in the 2019 Vampirella series from Dynamite. Both of those series, by the way, are by Christopher Priest. Both Draculinas go by the name Victory, although the one we're talking about here was originally named Victoria, but the two do differ in terms of appearance and, like I said, blood relation. Blood relation in this context almost becomes a vampire pun. This new Draculina isn't exactly a vampire, by the way, but is armed with a demonic ring that basically grants her powers similar to one, allowing her to accurately play the part. Draculina is currently a property of Dynamite Comics. Number 9. Tony Chu. Tony Chu is a quirky and unique character, but still is ultimately a hero, and even technically has superpowers, so he would qualify as a superhero. Tony is a detective who possesses the unique power of sebopathy. Whatever he eats, except for beets, he gains in-depth knowledge of, being able to tell where all the ingredients that make it up came from, being able to taste everything about that ingested food. Tony uses this skill to basically solve murders mainly, sometimes even ingesting parts of victims or the accused, sometimes even ingesting parts of the victims or the suspects to learn more about the case and help solve it. He initially worked for the Philadelphia Police Department, but ultimately gets fired after they witness him eating part of a deceased suspect. He later is hired by the FDA.
At number 8 is Dr. Mirage. Published by Valiant Comics, this hero's powers are all concerning the realm of the paranormal, having been born with the ability to see and speak to the dead. But the story told in this series explores how Dr. Shan Fong Mirage suddenly loses her abilities. And this comes at an awful time for her as she's just lost her husband. It's a tale of irony, which I won't spoil the ending of, but it's known to be a very gripping story about love and loss tied into the superhero genre. It's fair to say that there will be a few tear-jerking moments in this one, so avoid it if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff. I mean, Dr. Mirage spends the series trying to bring her husband back from the dead, right when her powers to call upon the dead start to disappear. That's a rough one to process. Okay, at number 7 is Thunderbolt. This hero first made an appearance in 1966 in a self-titled comic book series published by Charlton Comics. Only after Charlton sold all its superhero properties to DC in 1983 did Thunderbolt make his way to the DC family. But there was a good chunk of time there when Thunderbolt was completely indie. But that's the backstory of how it's made. What about the hero himself? Well, he's definitely got a cool look and name, but his abilities are kind of basic, all things considered. He's basically just got the classic enhanced strength, speed, and durability. One notable power would be his telepathy and control over animals, which is pretty cool. His origin is pretty unique, having studied with Tibetan monks who believe him to be the Vajra, or the protector of the monastery. This training gives him a mantra that allows him to push through some pretty challenging encounters using the power of his mind, repeating, "I can, I must, I will," to avoid succumbing to pain and fatigue. At number 6 is Witchblade. This comic series was first published by Top Cow Productions, part of Image Comics, starting in 1995 and ending in 2015. But picked up again in 2017 and then 2021 for new series. So this indie superhero has had quite a life already, without being touched by DC or Marvel. The superhero in the story isn't one person, but a handful of them, basically anyone who wields the Witchblade, which is a conscious, ancient gauntlet that gives the wearer superpowered abilities. The Witchblade is more than a weapon though. It's actually known as the male offspring of the Darkness and Angelus, two opposing aspects, as they're called, of the universe. And for some strange reason, whoever hosts the Witchblade must be female. The original host was Sarah Pizzini, a New York City detective. Then the weapon was taken on by Danielle Baptiste, a young dancer with impulsive tendencies, and it currently is hosted by Alex Underwood in the Revival series. The Witchblade offers powers of summoning, usually used for weaponry and armor, healing powers, superhuman strength, and shapeshifting, among other traits. Coming in at number 5 is the Spirit. This hero makes his debut back in 1940 as part of a 16-page newsprint created by Will Eisner. So this guy is very old, and makes most of his mark with the 5 million copies sold in the 1940s alone. In these newspaper prints during the Golden Age, the Spirit makes his mark as one of the most popular superheroes even during Marvel and DC's rise to fame. His abilities aren't very advanced, but considering he came in right at the cusp of the concept of superheroes becoming popular, this isn't much of a shock to me. He was still in the phase where most of the Spirit's adventures could even be confused with that of a noir detective. But he did have formidable athletic abilities, hand-to-hand combat, and almost superhuman endurance. But in later adaptations, he is eventually given superhuman longevity as well as healing abilities, solidifying him as a definitive superhero that may be responsible for many of the heroes we know today. At number 4 is the Darkness, another creation from Top Cow Productions. This anti-hero first makes his debut in 1996. But before his own publication, he appears in Witchblade number 10, introducing a dark and sort of evil-looking character. But despite his work in the criminal underworld, he's still widely considered a superhero or anti-hero, so I'm keeping him on the list. The story is about Jackie Estacado, a 21-year-old gangster who, on his 21st birthday, inherits the Darkness. The Darkness is an ancient entity that predates the history of the universe and passes from one host to another between generations. When Jackie takes it on, he's given a set of powers that give him access to a dark dimension and telepathic control over the demons within that world. The Darkness also grants him mystical armor that gives him super strength, speed, stamina, healing, and even flight. Alright, at number 3 we've got Avatar Korra. Korra is a superhero. She has superpowers in her own comic book series. Most people who get lost in the magical world of Avatar might not realize that the stories being told in this world are very similar to those of your typical superhero story. Korra trains at a young age in waterbending, earthbending, and firebending, which are pretty much superpowers. Except in this world, it takes dedication and training to acquire these powers, whereas in many superhero stories, powers are often stumbled upon or gifted at birth. Following the death of Avatar Aang, Korra takes up the mantle of Avatar at the early age of 4, when she performs her impressive grasp of the Avatar powers to the Order of the White Lotus. It's a really powerful and impressive universe that Nickelodeon has put together, and it's not often that such a thorough and immersive world is started in the context of a children's cartoon. So Korra deserves a spot high on this list. At number 2 we have Starlight from The Boys. This superhero comic series was released in 2006 by Wildstorm Comics, which I know has been part of DC since 1999, but it's still not considered part of the DC universe, so I'm gonna let it count. Starlight is born to mortal parents, and when she comes out of the womb, she actually accidentally blinds her parents with her powers. Due to the increased cost of living with their new disabilities, her parents have to give up Starlight for adoption. When she joins the Seven, a group of supes as they're called, with questionable morals and intentions, things only get worse for her. She's involved in some pretty traumatic events and is treated pretty badly. But eventually she starts standing up for herself and things start to get a bit better for her. I'm gonna leave it there because this is a great story and you should get into it whether you watch the show or read the graphic novels. Okay, finally at number 1 we have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. First published by Mirage Comics in 1984, TMNT was actually meant to just be a one-off comic issue, but due to its popularity, the creators decided to keep it going. The legacy of these 4 beloved reptiles began one insignificant night when co-creators Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird were doing some brainstorming, and they thought it was a funny image to have one of the slower animals in the animal kingdom be adept at martial arts. Little did they know this would become, well, what it is today. They don't necessarily have superpowers, but I mean, Batman doesn't either. And I figured everyone loves Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I would probably argue that they're superheroes, so I put them number 1. When I remembered that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started in comics, I knew I had to put them on the list. So here they are, at number 1. Right where they belong. At number 10 is Captain Canuck. This guy has some notoriety in the Great North, but still remains one of the smaller heroes who many people still haven't heard of. Created by Comley Comics in Winnipeg in 1975, this Canadian hero basically has no affiliation to any other heroes, he's not part of any alliances, and doesn't exist in any other publications other than his own. His story takes place in the then future year of 1993, when Canada is the most powerful and wealthy country in the world. Sort of a Canadian pipe dream. And even then, the creators had a hard time keeping the story going, with the franchise being discontinued after only 15 issues. There have been other attempts at keeping the story going throughout the years, usually by demand of the small yet loyal fan base of the hero, but the most recent appearance that this hero has made was a web series that was crowdfunded back in 2013 by Smiley Guys Studios. Along with this series came a new publication of the comic, a new issue having come out as recently as 2015. But this was pretty much the first time Captain Canuck has made an appearance in 30 years. He sits further back on the list only because the character himself has a pretty forgettable power set and backstory. But I mean, he only had a short shelf life. I believe if he was given more time, he could have gained a lot more depth and gotten much more powerful. At number 9, we have Spawn. This guy's pretty well known in the comic book community, but some people may not realize that he's not actually part of the DC or Marvel universes. This character was actually originally published by Image Comics, first appearing in 1992 in the self-titled comic Spawn. This guy's story is pretty cool. He's originally a CIA agent named Al Simmons from Detroit, Michigan, who specializes as an assassin. And basically, after butting heads with his director at the CIA, he's betrayed during a mission and killed by said director. And he goes to hell, you know, cause of all the killing. But while he's down there, he makes a deal with a demon named Malebolgia that if he goes back to Earth as a Hellspawn and works his evil deeds on the human plane, he'll be able to see his wife one last time. So that's how he becomes Spawn, a super powerful, basically immortal anti-hero focused on taking down crime rings in the human world. At one point, Spawn actually appears in a crossover with Batman, and Batman unfortunately throws a ninja star at his face and splits it down the middle, rendering Spawn to appear in one of his more notable states known as Shoestring Spawn. Pretty nuts.
Number 8. Quantum and Woody. You may have heard of Valiant's character Bloodshot, who recently got his own solo film, but what about all of their other superheroes? Quantum and Woody is a series and superhero duo from Valiant Comics. It was inspired by the superhero team-up series Power Man and Iron Fist, but is a lot more bizarre. The series itself was written by Christopher Priest, with art actually by the artist who did Power Man and Iron Fist. Pretty cool. Quantum and Woody are adoptive brothers who, after years of being estranged, are brought back together when their father mysteriously dies. While trying to figure out what really happened to him, they stumble upon superpowers. The catch? They must touch their power bands at least once every 24 hours to not only keep their powers, but also keep from losing their lives as well, as they would then no longer exist if they didn't touch their band. Quantum's powers are more defense-based, while Woody's are more offensive. Oh, and they also kind of have an animal sidekick, Vincent Van Gogh, who is even more bizarre than he already sounds. Just trust me, I don't want to spoil anything, but Vincent Van Gogh. What a goat. Number 7. Josephine. More commonly referred to as Jo, Josephine is the main character and hero of the Fatale series. More commonly referred to as Jo, Josephine is the main character and hero of the Fatale series, which comes to us from Image Comics. Fatale is a supernatural noir-style comic created by the brilliant team-up of writer Ed Brubaker and artist Sean Phillips. Seriously, I love these two together. Some might argue that Jo isn't really a hero as she's a little bit selfish, but in focusing on uncovering the mysteries of her own power and in trying to save herself, she does inevitably save others. in the long run at least. There are a lot of people that end up being sacrificed along the way in order for Jo to stand a chance in defeating her enemies in the end. And also there are just straight up people being sacrificed along the way by her enemies who are attempting to track her down. So yeah, she kinda also gets a lot of people killed, but you know, it's not her fault. Jo's powers allow her to control all men who gaze upon her, with them being irresistibly attracted to her no matter who they are and no matter if she wants to influence them or not. Unless of course they are able to protect themselves against her influence with extremely powerful magic, which we only see from a couple characters really in the series. In other words, her power is pretty freaking strong. The only downside here, which is kind of the crux of it all, is that she can't fully control her powers. That is, she can't turn them off when she wants to, which ends up causing a lot of problems for Jo along the way, but I won't spoil any of that. Anyways, if you haven't read Fatale, it's now, I think, it's gonna be 10 years old soon, so go and read it, hurry up! Came out I think in 2012. That's when it started. Number 6. King Mob. King Mob is the leader of the Invisibles. He was once a horror writer who wrote under the pen name Kit Morrison. As the series The Invisibles is created by Grant Morrison, Mob is believed to be sort of a fictional stand-in for Morrison himself. King Mob's legal name was Gideon Starozowski, and he struggles with his alter persona, especially troubled by how violent he, as King Mob, can be. King Mob is not only a leader who wields power in that sense, because he's a leader, but also has experience with firearms and weapons, is a skilled martial artist and fighter, is psychic, can time travel, and employs the use of chaos magic. So lots of cool things that he can do. Also, if you haven't read The Invisibles, it is really trippy. Go read it. If you like The Matrix, you'll probably like The Invisibles. If you like The Matrix and if you like Doom Patrol, which of course is also Grant Morrison. Not The Matrix, Doom Patrol. Number 5. Laura Wilson / Persephone. Laura Wilson is the main character of the Wicked and the Divine series from Image Comics. The series was created by writer Kieran Gillen and artist Jamie McKelvey. In this story, gods come to life cyclically, being kinda reincarnated. This is known as the recurrence. Laura herself is obsessed with the gods and the pantheon, who are all of course re-emerging at the time. She wants nothing more than to be a god herself. At least that is what she thinks she wants, until her wishes kind of come true. She is revealed to be Persephone, who is believed to be the final god to return during the recurrence. As Persephone, she can summon plants and vines and control them. She also seems to have some kind of control or influence over the underworld. Laura can also create fireballs and reveal to others past events, summoning visions of the past even if she was not present for those events. Number 4. Sludge. Sludge is a hero or anti-hero who comes to us initially from Malibu Comics and was created by writer Steve Gerber and artist Aaron Lopresti. Sludge was once Frank Hogue, a dirty NYPD police officer who accepted bribes in exchange for favors when it came to drug dealings. He was ordered by the crime boss he worked for, John Paul Marcello, to kill another likely dirtier cop. When Frank refused Marcello's request, Marcello had him killed instead. After being shot, a grenade went off, knocking him into a bucket of chemical waste. Who put that chemical waste there? The waste would merge with him after he was dumped into the sewers, turning him into the super-heroic monstrosity Sludge. Sludge possesses a healing factor and super strength. He could also kill or mutate his opponents with just a touch. Kinda turns them into sludge. It's pretty dark, really. Number 3. Radiant Yellow. We don't know that much about the newest Radiants, but we do know that they seem interested in protecting innocent people from whatever craziness is currently going on. Okay, hard to keep talking about all of this Radiant Black series without spoiling anything, but once again, I'm gonna try my best. Radiant Yellow appears to be an older gentleman, and as far as I know, we don't really know his name yet. What we do know is that each Radiant seems to have their own power set. At least that's what we're being led to believe by the story and the imagery used. It hasn't exactly all been laid out yet, which is honestly kind of what makes this series so much fun. There's so much we don't know. The mystery of it all. Radiant Yellow, however, seems to have powers based in perhaps light manipulation. To me, that's what it looks like the force blasts that they emit are based in, and it also looks to me like they can perhaps manipulate light to create illusions. That's just based on the imagery that's surrounding them in the comics. Like the other Radiants, Yellow isn't too experienced and doesn't seem to understand the full extent of their powers just yet. Radiant Yellow Marcello comes to us from the Radiant Black series, which belongs to Image Comics and is written by Kyle Higgins, who, yes, was also the initial writer of the Power Rangers series, and it was also created by artist Marcelo Costa. Number 2. X-O Manowar. Valiant Comics actually has a whole stable and universe filled with supers, including this one here, X-O Manowar. X-O Manowar is actually the name of the sentient armor that is tied to our hero in this series, Auric of Dacia, a Visigoth from the 5th century AD. Auric would end up being abducted by aliens and enslaved for years before he managed to escape. Auric learned of where his captive's armory was kept and basically ended up getting there and then getting the X-O Manowar suit. He then bonded with the suit and used that advanced tech to escape his captors. However, due to interstellar travel, by the time he arrived back on Earth, it was now the 20th century, basically modern day. Eric would have to adjust to this very different world, and along the way would meet other superheroes from the Valiant universe. That's right, there's not just 2 more, there's a whole bunch of them. X-O Manowar is a character created by writers Jim Shooter, Steve Englehart, and as well as artists Bob Layton and Barry Windsor-Smith. Number 1. Black Hammer. Black Hammer is Joe Weber, the title character of the Black Hammer series, written by Jeff Lemire with artwork by the amazing Dean Ormston. The Black Hammer series was made to be completely different from other more traditional superhero comics, but if I did have to compare Black Hammer to anyone from that more conventional world, I would liken him to Thor myself. Joe Weber inherited the hammer and powers of the former Black Hammer when he died, being transported to the realm of New World as soon as he himself had picked up the fallen hammer. There he learned that he was meant to become the new Black Hammer, replacing the fallen one as Starlock's new and most powerful warrior in the fight against Starlock's evil twin, the Anti-God. While being the title character, Black Hammer isn't actually the main character of this series. As we learn near the end of issue number 1, Black Hammer sacrificed himself to save the world from the Anti-God and keep his fellow superheroes and friends alive. But what really happened to him, and just how and why are his teammates now seemingly trapped in the timeless and kinda eerie town of Rockwood? Well, to find out, you'll have to read on, true believers. Number 10. Wind. Wind is the name of the main character from this self-titled series, also of course named Wind. It comes from Boom Studios and was written by James Tynion IV with art by Michael Dalianos. Wind is a teenage hero who has always hidden the truth of his elven and magical heritage as a weird blood. His heritage grants him great power he's been hiding from his whole life in an attempt to fit in, being made to believe that magic is dangerous and basically turns people into monsters, or in some other way corrupts them. When he becomes too old to hide his pointed ears and who he is any longer, he is forced to either try and change or embrace who he really is. And in order to protect his friends against those who would hunt both him and them down, Wind ultimately embraces his magical side, unleashing powerful abilities. Wind has wings, can fly, and can communicate with force like spirits or sprites. He also has, like many other teen heroes, the power of friendship, which usually means he ends up making friends with powerful allies. I would say if you love the world of Avatar, you might also end up falling in love with both the character Wind and his series. It reminds me of Avatar, at least, in like the best way. Number 9. Lord Fanny. Lord Fanny is Hilda Morales, who was born as a boy but raised as a girl. She's a transsexual woman and one of the first trans heroes in comics. Lord Fanny was raised as a girl by her grandmother because only women in their culture could become witches, and her grandmother was a powerful witch who wanted to pass on her knowledge and power to Fanny. Although Fanny herself did choose to be a girl, if that makes sense. Lord Fanny is a member of the Invisibles team and was created by writer Grant Morrison and artist Steve Yoel. The Invisibles was a comic series that existed as part of DC's Vertigo imprint back when it was around. I miss Vertigo so much. The series began in 1994, and in issue 13 we'd learn more about Lord Fanny's origins and her very tragic backstory. Lord Fanny's such a cool character. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about even more cool, lesser known indie heroes, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Red Sonja. One of my favorite lesser known heroes is Red Sonja. Red Sonja comes to us from the less sci-fi, more fantasy based world of sword and sorcery. She is an extremely gifted fighter, marksman, and sword bearer. Red Sonja, the She-Devil, is said to have been given her name for, well, many different reasons. One such story as to how she got her name is that she left to seek out adventure and her fortune and became a mercenary, earning the name Red because of all the blood that she spilled. Red Sonja, while not a traditional hero, pretty much always stands up to those who are cruel and corrupt, often fighting for those who are oppressed, even against her better judgment. She has even fought death before in combat and won, allowing allowing her to live on when she was on the brink of death. Red Sonja was once a character from the Marvel Comics wheelhouse, but currently calls Dynamite Comics her home. Number 7. Vampirella, but you can call her Vampy. Vampirella isn't a conventional hero by any means, but she definitely tries to do what's best by folks while still being a vampire from outer space, and at the same time with ties to Lilith and Hell. Overall, she's both complicated and also kinda super simple, and it's that weird blend of those two very different elements that I love about her. Vampy, being an intergalactic vampire, is super strong, fast, can fly because she actually has wings, and also has been shown to have access to advanced technology at times due to her ties to the planet Draculon. Vampirella is currently attached to Dynamite Comics, but was originally a property of Warren Publishing. Number 6. Savage Dragon. Savage Dragon is a popular hero as far as the lesser known or indie heroes go, so if you haven't heard of him before, you might want to check him out. Initially, his origins were a mystery. All we knew was that he was a humanoid, green-skinned, dragon-like character who decided to fight as a police officer and hero, fighting against the criminal and mutant super freaks of Chicago. That's also in part because Savage Dragon initially had really bad amnesia in the comics, so he didn't actually even remember his own origin story at the time. Savage Dragon hails from Image Comics and was originally introduced as simply Dragon before being known under the mantle of Savage Dragon. His powers include super strength and super healing. Number 5. Witchblade. Witchblade is a hero who comes from Top Cow Productions. Mainly we've known Witchblade as Sarah Pizzini, but the Witchblade has belonged to many other powerful women throughout the years. The Witchblade is an ancient mystical artifact that typically binds itself to a host who can then wield and use its powers at will. It can be more or less powerful depending on the host, but in this case, since Sarah is one of the most well-known hosts of the Witchblade, we're gonna basically base the ranking on her abilities. The Witchblade can be used to summon mystical armor, which can cover the entirety of its host's body, though typically most are not skilled enough to actually summon that much armor, and instead are usually only covered in little pieces of armor as a result. Hence why you see that Witchblade art and she's like, not really covered in much. This armor grants the wearer invulnerability, but even if its host is harmed, it also grants the power to heal. Aside from creating armor, the Witchblade can also be used to create weapons on the fly. It also increases its host's strength and endurance. Sarah herself was also a trained NYPD detective prior to becoming the host for the Witchblade, so she also brings her skills as an officer and detective to the table. Number 4. Luther Strode. Luther Strode is the main character in the Strange Talent of Luther Strode series, a series that hails from Image Comics. Luther ends up acquiring powers that enhance his strength, durability, speed, and combat skills after receiving a mail-order exercise program known as the Hercules Method. Luther's powers, however, only create more harm than good in his life and lead to a lot of death, much of it happening as a result of his own involvement. Try as he might to try and do good with it. While not a conventional hero, Luther definitely fits the bill of an anti-hero, or more accurately tragic hero archetype, with everything going awry no matter his intent. He's also someone I would personally love to see take on the hero who made our number 2 spot. Number 3. Radiant Black. Radiant Black is Nathan Burnett, or was Nathan Burnett. Nathan to start, anyways. Going to try not to spoil this series because it's one that I think we should all be reading, so I'm just gonna leave it at Nathan for now. Radiant Black is the first hero we meet in this series. In issue number 1, Nathan ends up getting the powers of the Black Radiant, which basically means he has the powers of a black hole. Radiant Black can manipulate gravity and also becomes super dense with this power set. The downside for this hero is being new means that he's pretty inexperienced in the comics thus far. However, gravity manipulation as a power set is insane, which is how he ranks so high up on this list despite his inexperience. Radiant Black hails from Image Comics, and like I said, if you have not checked out this series and gotten to know the Radiants yet, well, you definitely need to change that, and you need to do so. It's like Power Rangers, but possibly cooler, and I say that having much respect and much love for Power Rangers. So that's not a snub at all, it's just like, it's really good. Number 2. Bulletproof. You know Invincible, but do you know Bulletproof? Fans of the comic series likely do, but if you just became an Invincible fan via the animated series, then this isn't a character that you'd be familiar with just yet. After all, at this point we've only had 1 season so far, so it's very likely Bulletproof will appear in the series, just not until a bit later on. Bulletproof is Zandel Rudolph. He got his powers as a result of his brother using him as basically a science experiment, as his brother Tyrone was actually obsessed with superpowers. Sandel would end up getting powers as a result of this mad science, while his brother would end up dead. Bulletproof also goes on to take up the invincible mantle at one point, filling in for Mark when he is off-world. Sandel's powers are based on energy absorption, which I think is one of the strongest power sets to have personally. Bulletproof, like other heroes in the Invincible universe, comes to us from Skybound, which is an imprint of Image Comics. Number 1. The Darkness. The Darkness is an ancient elemental force that takes up residence in a host, granting them special powers. One of the most famous hosts that we have come to know as the Darkness is Jackie Estacado. The powers that Jackie wields are similar to what you'd expect from some kind of demonic force. They're also honestly comparable to Venom's power set from Marvel Comics, at least I see a lot of similarities there. The Darkness gives you access to a sort of mystical armor which can be summoned at will. It also grants the user a healing factor, shapeshift abilities, and through them also the ability to fly via wings that you can create. Jackie as the Darkness can also create dark tendrils, which he can also turn into weapons, and he can also summon entities known as Darklings. While more of an anti-hero due to his methods, Jackie Estacado is still a hero in the sense that he generally fights on the side of good.
At number 10 is Jack Staff, the penultimate British superhero. Not actually, this guy is actually known to be kind of a meme hero, but he's notable enough to make it onto this list. Jack Staff is known to have been alive since the Victorian era, which is when he receives his powers. And considering he hasn't aged since then, it can be deduced that he's either immortal or something pretty close to it. He uses a staff, as you could have guessed, and fights bad guys with the use of energy manipulation. This basically just means that he's able to move energy into his staff to strengthen its blows enough to break down walls, and other stuff like that. He was created by Paul Grist under his own publication Dancing Elephant Press, after his pitch to Marvel for a new Union Jack series was rejected. But since then, Jack's staff has been picked up by Image Comics, so that's a win, right? Hey, DM me on Instagram and let me know if you have any more fun facts about Jack Staff. I'd love to know more about this guy. At number 9, we have Darkman. This is a cool one. This superhero was created in 1990 by director Sam Raimi, who you should all know was the main man behind the first and best major live-action Spider-Man film series. But 10 years before that, there was Darkman, a superhero developed by the writer-director himself for a film of the same name starring Liam Neeson. Darkman doesn't have any actual powers, but when he's beaten up and left disfigured by a group of mobsters, he sets off to take down the crime ring himself. He does this by creating very realistic masks that allow him to impersonate different key players in the ranks of the mob. This film was successful and impactful enough that, at the time of its release, a comic book series with the same name was also released. And yes, this was under Marvel, but Darkman deserves a spot on this list because his origin has nothing to do with Marvel originally. I think there should just be a Sam Raimi superhero category, personally.
Number 8. Dr. Multiverse. Alright, breaking away from Image Comics now and landing firmly in DC's territory, we have Maya Chamara, Dr. Multiverse. Dr. Multiverse is alone in the multiverse, meaning there is only one of her. Originating from Earth 8, Maya was bathed in cosmic energies and was granted the powers of the multiverse, which basically means that she's able to see variants and alternate versions of people living in different realities. She can see people and objects passing between dimensions, and she has the ability to locate and track anything she has come into contact with throughout the multiverse. She also has access to vast energy manipulation abilities, which let her fire blasts and create shields, but she can totally open up portals to other universes and send people back to their own universe. This former member of the Retaliators became part of the Justice League Incarnate, using her multiversal powers to help this multiversal team of heroes. She's like a DC version of Marvel's Captain Universe, Starbrand, and America Chavez all just mixed into one, and I think she's pretty alright. If you guys are enjoying this video so far, make sure you drop a like to let us know you want more videos similar to this one. Just one little click's all you gotta do. Thanks. Number 7. Batwalker. I'm gonna be honest, I just assumed this had already been done in the past, but no. Dinosaur versions of DC's superheroes had not been done before. I'm alright with this because that means this year we were treated to the Jurassic League, a DC story that takes place on an Earth where heroes like Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman are actually dinosaurs that protect the puny human race from the carnivore dinosaurs who would eat them. There's a Brachiosaurus Supersaur from another world who looks eerily really like Superman, a Triceratops Wonder Dawn hailing from the Isle of Trimascara, and on the outskirts of Growltham City, we are introduced to Bat Walker, an Allosaurus who dresses up like a bat after the loss of his parents at the hands of an insane Dilophosaurus who goes by the name Jokerzard. I mean, there's even a panel of this comically green Allosaurus throwing a stone batarang, and it's just something that I never knew I needed in my life until this point. I'm just so glad it exists. Number 6, the Spirit of Variance, Vox Igni. Sean Cassidy is not a new character by any stretch of the imagination, but in Legion of X number 7 by Marvel, he does become something completely new. Sean was betrayed by Moira McTaggart, who stole his face so she could enter into Krakoa. So when he was brought back to life, he was rather upset. Now there's a whole thing going on as well with the character of Legion right now that I just can't get into, but essentially a character named Mother Righteous offers Legion a gift in the form of a certain kind of power. David Haller refuses this gift, but luckily for us, Sean Cassidy was there to take it instead. Making a deal with Mother Righteous, Cassidy was given, or I guess possessed by, a cast out spirit of vengeance called the Spirit of Variance. This transformed Banshee into a flaming skull version of himself named Vox Igni, which is the voice of fire, and if a name like that doesn't sound cool to you, then just look at this character. Good golly, he's awesome. Number 5, Bat Prince. Another alternate version of Batman, I know, but he belongs to probably one of my favorite alternate reality stories to come out of DC Comics, Dark Knights of Steel. This story takes place in a world of medieval fantasy where the Wayne family ruled their kingdom until the mother and father of Superman came to Earth. The L family house became rulers of the land after a horrible attack on the Wayne family. Now, as the surviving son of the Waynes, Bruce serves as both a knight and son to the L family, with his network of Robins and his brilliant mind. But as the world is at each other's throats in this story, this Bat Prince learns about the actions that led to his birth and the powers he now possesses as a half-Kryptonian Dark Knight. Dark Knights of Steel that came out this year in 2022 just has so many interesting and fresh takes on classic DC characters. It's fresh and fun, and I got a variant cover of the first issue and it looks so sweet. Maybe one day I'll let you guys see it. Maybe. But definitely read this story. Definitely do it. Number 4, Miracle Man. Miracle Man is also not a new character. In fact, Marvel's Miracle Man is one of comics' most dramatic publishing debacles, coming back from 1954. Decades of rights battles over the character meant that he kind of bounced around publishers and then disappeared from the pages of comics altogether for a long time, which is why it seemed way too good to be true when Marvel announced in 2013 that it had acquired the rights to Miracle Man. Now, over the years, the company has attempted to bring the character back, but even more legal issues kind of stopped that from being able to happen. But luckily, starting in October 2022, Neil Gaiman finally continued the Silver Age arc that he had created for the character, with Marvel planning a number of other Miracle Man books. So now, after all this time, we get both one of the newest and kind of one of the oldest characters all wrapped up into one awesome Miracle Man, Marvel Man, Mickey Moran, whatever you want to call him, shaped package. Number 3, Abyss. Alright, before you jump on me in the comments, this isn't the villain Abyss. That guy was Lex Luthor's own evil Batman, who was honestly kinda cool, but he did not last very long. Abyss was defeated by Batman, who got some massive help from a Bodnesian police officer named Detective Kea, who helped Batman not only survive, but even forced Abyss to retreat after he had defeated most of Batman Incorporated, which led him straight into a defeat at the hands of the Dark Knight himself. Now, after Abyss had been defeated, Kaya found some of the villain's equipment and decided to hunt down the ones who had ended her parents' lives. There's a lot of parallels between Batman and the characters in and around him in the later issues of Batman Volume 3 that came out this year in 2022. Anyways, Batman offered to help Kaya, but in helping her, he also talked her into just arresting the criminals instead of doing what she was planning to do, which I'm sure you can imagine what that was. She wasn't brought into Batman Inc., but she is now another ally of Batman, and I hope she gets some more appearances in the comics from this point on because the costume's pretty cool. Number 2, the Joneses. How about a whole family of superheroes for this spot? And not just that, but also some social and political commentary wrapped up into it. That sounds like so much fun. Not really. Anyways, out of AWA Studios comes The Joneses, which is a spin-off of another AWA Studios comic called The Resistance, and it focuses on a suburban family who have gained superpowers after a global pandemic known as the Great Death. All 4 family members, mother, father, sister, and brother, were all transformed into something superhuman, but unfortunately, the world has begun to embrace fascism, born of fear of the pandemic and the superpowered individuals that have appeared, known as the Reborns. The Joneses face some pretty scary consequences if they are exposed as Reborns, and so they are presented with the dilemma of using their abilities for good at the risk of exposing themselves and inviting danger, or just laying low and staying out of the way. It's an interesting little idea for a comic book, and the global pandemic idea seems a little bit familiar. I don't know why. So I found it fun to just jump into this little 2022 comic from AWA Studios, and maybe you will too. Number 1. Guts and Glory. If you're part of the Thunderbolts, are you really a hero? Yes, you are. The problem for me and this list is that when Guts and Glory first appeared in Thunderbolts Volume 4 Number 1 from August 2022, we weren't really given much information on the guy, and we still haven't been really, which makes my job way harder. He was placed on Hawkeye's Thunderbolts team under the Mayor of New York, Luke Cage. The only reason given for this character's introduction to the team was that apparently having a, quote, man of mystery would do wonders for the team's public relations. That's actually the reason. There's literally nothing else given about why he's here. He is a big stocky guy with cyborg body parts and an absolutely insane amount of weaponry, including a particle rupture laser, which I don't even want to imagine what that thing does to a person. It just sounds horrible. He also looks a bit like Cable, as he's a totally 90s cyber-inspired warrior, but just more military and not nearly as old as Cable, with absolutely no information about his backstory, again, or his training. Thank you. Thank you so much, Marvel. Please change this. Gutson is cool, okay? Thank you.
Number 10, Daredevil. No, not that Daredevil. This Daredevil is Bart Hill, who witnessed his father's murder before the killer branded him with a hot iron, making him mute with shock. He learned to become an expert boomerang thrower and became a costumed crime fighter. He was later rendered unmute with no explanation, and honestly isn't that interesting. He actually appeared after Superman, but fell into the public domain and has therefore been used by several different publishers, although they often change his name to avoid conflicts with the Marvel legal team. Number 9, Miss Fury. First appearing in 1941 in newspaper strips published by Bell Syndicate, Marla Drake was a wealthy socialite who was attending a party when she discovered that another woman was wearing the same outfit as her. In order to prevent embarrassment, she changed into a ceremonial panther skin outfit that her uncle had taken from Africa and willed to her. The suit of course granted her superpowers, which she used to fight crime and achieve a level of cultural appropriation most white people can only dream of. Talk about my culture is not a costume. Her powers are basic acrobatic, climbing, and fighting powers, and she was known for using her claws and whip against her enemies. She actually didn't use the suit very often, as her manservant, a Brazilian albino Indian named Albino Joe, Jesus Christ. Well, he warned her that every favor that was gained through black magic would result with 2 misfortunes. Her comic strip appearances were later compiled by the company that would one day become Marvel, Timely Comics. This has made the rights to her a little hard to follow, as she is considered canon to the Marvel universe, but also has appeared in comics published by both Malibu and Dynamite Comics. What makes her notable is that Miss Fury was the first female superhero to actually be created by a woman. Alright, that's all of the characters who you could argue were part of the Golden Age. From here on out, all of the entries were created before Superman first appeared in June 1938.
Number 8, Bitewing. There's nothing that wins me over more than a puppy. But then DC goes and gives a puppy a 3-legged gray blue-eyed pitbull puppy and gives it to Nightwing, probably one of the best members of the Bat family. And then they go and give it the nickname of Bitewing. I literally teared up just typing this part because of the overload of adorable that I got while looking at this. Haley the dog was being chased and mistreated by some teenagers when Dick Grayson stepped in, rescued, and adopted her. Now, the first sidekick turned full-on hero in DC Comics has his very own super pet, especially after she was given a costume and the ability to speak from a 5th-dimensional imp. Now, she fights alongside Nightwing as Bitewing, and it's cute. It's very cute.
Number 7. Escapade. I love Escapade, and I also love her BFF Morgan Red. While initially introduced as a criminal in the Marvel Voices Pride issue of this year, I think it's safe to say that Escapade and her friend Morgan and his genetically engineered flying turtle pal, Hibbert, will soon become a team of mutant heroes instead of anti-heroes. I mean, even if they are criminals who steal stuff, they really only try to steal stuff from the worst people, which makes them still pretty altruistic. Escapade is a trans mutant named Sheila Sexton, whose powers involve swapping places with whoever she decides to use her mutant powers on. This can be someone as low level as a random passerby, or someone as high level as another superpowered being who is about to defeat her, or even the President of the United States. So much potential for this power.
Number 6. Bolt. Since the live-action Black Adam movie was announced, DC decided that they would also put out a Black Adam solo series for the first time. And in the first issue, it puts Black Adam on the ropes of mortality. In response to this, Black Adam finds his descendant, Malik Adam White, a medical student living in the Bronx. Basically, Black Adam just tells this guy he is going to succeed Black Adam and inherit his power, and then he forces him by having one of his people pop a cap in Malik, and the only way to save himself is to take Black Adam's ring and say Shazam. While Black Adam calls Malik White Adam, Malik gives a good little lecture about the inherent racism there. So he prefers to go by Thunderbolt or just straight up Bolt. From what I've read, I really like his character, and he is supposed to represent a sort of form of redemption for the character of Black Adam because, as they say in the comic, there is no true redemption for Black Adam. Not at this point, at least.
Number 5. Amass. Amass is a really cool new mutant. They made their first appearance in Steve Orlando's Marauder series in issue number 4. Amass is a mutant of Threshold, the oldest mutant civilization to have ever existed. They, along with 2 other mutants, had their minds stored within a codex, hoping that they would arrive in the future after being restored and would be able to seek help for their people who were on the brink of extinction when they last left them in the past. Amass's mutant powers allowed them to physically combine mutants and their powers together, joining together to create one basically big ball of mutants, which kinda looks like one big being. Hence their mutant name of Amass. This appears to both psychologically and physically combine whichever mutants they choose with themselves, with their new combined form also possessing all the powers of said mutants, which I think is pretty nuts.
Number 4. Grey Wolf. Of the characters I'm talking about on this list, my favorites are absolutely a 3-way tie between Tosin, Bitewing, and this guy, Grey Wolf. Okay, so Lex Luthor was running a crime-fighting experiment around the world trying to create a group of his own similar to Batman Incorporated, with the ultimate goal of creating Abyss, his own Batman. But then he abandoned all these projects that then went wild doing their own thing. So Batman Incorporated's international team, being led by Ghostmaker, go on a mission to bring them down in Batman 2022 Annual Volume 3 Number 1 from July. Their first mission is to Kazbek, Chechnya, to take on Grey Wolf. Grey Wolf was unleashed on the city to help its citizens who had been exposed to Lazarus resin that had made them all extremely violent. With Ghostmaker, he was able to cure the residents and join Batman Inc. as a good guy, but he displayed enough skill to best Dark Ranger, El Gaucho, and Batman of Japan in a 3-on-1 fight, and he beat Wingman 1-on-1. Also, he's like 7 feet tall minimum. Super cool.
Number 3. Black Mist. Black Mist is a completely new character who is not yet a member of Batman Incorporated, but who might end up becoming one in the future. She was actually one of my favorite characters to appear in Batman Inc. issue number 1 from 2022. Not only does she look like a badass, but she also seems to be wary of joining up with Batman Inc. Black Mist appears as a sort of consulting detective in issue number 1 of the 3rd volume of this series. We don't know much about her yet, but she seems to be working with Batman Incorporated to help them solve the mystery behind just who is killing all the teachers of Batman and Ghostmaker, and why and how this perpetrator is doing that. One thing we do know about Black Mist straight out of the gate is that she seems to have history with the Knight. The two recognize each other and are presented as friendly to one another.
Number 2. Egro the Unbreakable. Okay, so this one definitely took me by a bit of a surprise. Coming out of the 2022 volume of Thunderbolts, specifically issue number 2, we are introduced to Egro. Egro is a super interesting little troll-looking monster who lives peacefully on Monster Isle. But you see, Egro heard of the monster exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, so naturally he expected to go and see his own statue. He just had to make sure that it captured his true beauty. But What the heck? They didn't have a statue for Egro the Unbreakable? An insult like that could not fly, so he obviously had to destroy the other statues for the other monsters, which brought the Thunderbolts to fight him. Instead, after Egro punched Power Man through the roof with his big lava hands and incapacitated Persuasion with his telepathic abilities, which helped him learn English, he surrendered to America Chavez and explained the situation. Then, he was invited to join the team. Yay! Happy ending for the little steroid Yoda.
Number 1. Nightmite. Just like Superman has Mr. Mxyzptlk and Batman has Batmite, Dick Grayson, the superhero known as Nightwing, now has his own imp superfan from the 5th dimension, Dixel, though Dixel prefers to be known as Nightmite. While it might seem strange to put an imp from the 5th dimension on a superhero list given, you know, some of their track records, Nightmite is genuinely well-meaning and helpful, unlike most other imps who are somewhat mischievous or just downright troublesome. Being an imp from the 5th dimension also means that Dixel can be super powerful, as he has magical, reality-bending, and warping powers. Nightmite made his first appearance very recently in the comics, as of the time of this recording, in issue number 98 of Nightwing, which was released in November of 2022.
Number 10. Tosin Oduye. Tosin is such a cool character. Okay, so as a kid, Tosin Oduye saw the way that Wakanda became a socially isolated nation who believed themselves superior and seemed to always attract war. The Marube, the tribe Tosin belongs to, began to separate a bit from the main Wakandan people. They hated the way Wakanda used vibranium for tech, so they instead found a way to refine the vibranium and flow with it. They gave themselves vibranium tattoos, and some in their tribe, who trained hard enough, could have the vibranium flow with them, granting them some pretty cool powers. It's like they harness the energy of vibranium and can use it to move extremely fast, or unleash vibranium energy blasts, or even seemingly grant himself a vibranium armor. Last thing I want to say is that the covers for the issues of this volume of Black Panther are just so cool. Definitely check it out.
Number 9. Aleph Chernikov. Aleph Chernikov is a young mutant hero who appears in the Wolverine Patch flashback series by Larry Hama. This was a miniseries that came out earlier in 2022 and covered an untold tale from Patch's adventures in Madripoor back in the good old days. Here, Patch works to help 3 Russian mutants who have escaped their government, but have been tracked to Madripoor. Madripoor's military, royal armed guards, as well as S.H.I.E.L.D. and Russia themselves appear to be after the mutants, but Patch, Archie, and Tiger intervene in hopes of helping the 3. In the end they do, and among them is Aleph, the child of the other 2 mutants, David and Raisa. Aleph appears to be the main focus of everyone's efforts when it comes to hunting them down. They possess powerful healing abilities, psionic abilities, and possibly even the power to manipulate reality. But they're also a child, so of course everyone's like, we gotta protect this baby.
Number 8. Doc Savage. Doc Savage, the Man of Bronze, first appeared in Doc Savage magazine number 1 in 1933, 5 whole years before Superman. He appeared in pulp magazines, which would tell the stories of the character in prose with some illustrations, rather than in a purely visual medium as comics would end up doing later. In 2016, Stan Lee actually went on record as saying that Doc Savage was the forerunner to modern superheroes as we know them. Doc Savage's story is that his father assembled a group of scientists who were all experts in their fields to train his son almost from birth to make him a perfect human specimen who is at peak human condition and is a master martial artist and scientist, physician, inventor, explorer, and detective. He was raised in the jungle where he received a really intense tan, earning him the nickname the Man of Bronze. After his father was killed, he decided to devote himself to fighting crime, traveling the world and battling criminals. He is extremely rich and has a base in the Arctic that he calls the Fortress of Solitude. He is aided by a team of friends known as the Fabulous Five, who are all experts in their scientific fields, but of course not as expert as Doc Savage is. In his 3rd appearance in 1933, Quest of the Spider, he is referred to as a Superman by one of his colleagues. Doc Savage has appeared in pulp novels, radio stories, and movies over the years, but isn't nearly as well known as the hero he inspired. He has made comic appearances for both Marvel, DC, and Dark Horse over the years. Number 7. The Green Hornet. This is a character you are likely at least aware of due to the Seth Rogen movie and the classic 60s television show starring Bruce Lee, but the Green Hornet's history goes goes back even further than that. First appearing in his own radio series in 1936, the Green Hornet is really Britt Reed, the owner of the Daily Sentinel newspaper. At night, the Green Hornet fights evil with the help of his driver, Kato, in their supercar, the Black Beauty. What makes the Hornet unique is that he pretends to be a criminal so that he can infiltrate the various gangs of his city in order to take them down. In a fun bit of lore building, Britt's father is actually Dan Reed Jr., the nephew of the Lone Ranger. The Green Hornet made the jump from radio to the big screen in 1940, appearing in 2 serials, The Green Hornet and The Green Hornet Strikes Again. He appeared from time to time in his own comic book series, which adapted his radio stories, but his most iconic appearance was in the 1966 television show, which starred Van Williams as the Hornet and Bruce Lee as Kato. The show was made by the same team who made the 60s Batman show, but employed a more serious tone than the campy Batman show. It lasted for 1 season, but has managed to stay in the public consciousness, being the main inspiration for the 2011 film. The license for Green Hornet comics is currently with Dynamite Comics, who have taken him back to his Depression-era roots. If you want to familiarize yourself with the Hornet's sting, might I recommend Chuck Wagner's Green Hornet Year 1. Number 6. The Shadow. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows! First created in 1930, The Shadow was originally the narrator of the Detective Story Hour radio program, which was created to help boost the sales of Detective Story magazine. People began asking the newsstand vendors for that Shadow Detective magazine, and the publishers decided to develop an actual character for the narrator and give him his own pulp magazine series, The Shadow Magazine, which by 1937 received its own radio series. There was some inconsistencies between the character in the radio program and magazine appearances, so we'll go with the more well-known version of the story. The Shadow is a man who has traveled the world and learned how to cloud men's minds and become invisible, hiding in the shadows to attack criminals. He has taken over the life of a wealthy playboy named Lamont Cranston, whose identity he uses to fund his exploits and gather intel from his friend, the police commissioner. If this sounds kinda Batman-y to you, then you would be right, as the Shadow was a major influence on Batman's modus operandi. In fact, the Shadow story, Partners of Peril, was lifted almost verbatim by Bob Kane when he wrote the first Batman story featured in Detective Comics number 27. Both feature the hero investigating a series of murders of a group of businessmen who own a chemical syndicate together. Both feature the hero getting trapped under a glass dome that fills with gas that they then plug with a handkerchief, proving once again that Bob Kane was a talentless hack who would have never been remembered if it weren't for Bill Finger. The Shadow has appeared in pulp magazines and radio dramas and films over the years. His most recent feature film was in 1994, starring Alec Baldwin as the title character. It's actually pretty underrated. The character is currently licensed to Dynamite Comics and has a pretty extensive catalog of appearances available for readers. Number 5. The Phantom. The Phantom first appeared in comic strips in 1936 in the fictional African country of Bangala after a castaway whose ship was attacked by pirates washed up on shore and was adopted by the locals. He swore revenge on all evildoers and developed the persona of the Ghost Who Walks, otherwise known as the Phantom. The mantle is passed down through generations, with each new Phantom being sworn to protect the jungles of Bangala. The Phantom whose adventures are most commonly followed is Kit Walker, the 21st Phantom. Although his purple costume might come across as silly, he was the first hero to wear skin-tight clothes and a mask which obscured the pupils, leaving only the white eyes, something that is of course a staple of masked superheroes now. He is also known for wearing 2 rings, one of which he uses to leave a skull-shaped mark on the villains he punches. The Phantom has appeared in comics, novels, serials, and a live-action movie in 1996 starring Billy Zane. Number 4. The Spider. The Spider was created in 1933 to be a direct competitor to the Shadow. He is really millionaire Richard Wentworth, who disguises himself in early appearances by wearing a mask, a wig, and a false hunchback. He has no issues with killing his enemies and always used his ring to leave a spider-shaped mark on his victims' foreheads so no one but him would be blamed for his actions. He is aided by his manservant Ram Singh and is a master of disguise, adopting several aliases in order to infiltrate and gather information. His stories are notable for being extremely violent, with the various villains' death tolls routinely going into the thousands by the end of each story. He was the first pulp hero to be given a live-action serial in 1938, where he was given a new new look that featured a red spiderweb, which helped to distinguish him from the Shadow. In the years since his pulp novel appearances, the Spider has been featured in comic book series published by Eclipse Comics, Moonstone Books, and Dynamite Entertainment, who adopted Spider's serial costume to the page for the character. Number 3. Black Bat. There are actually two Black Bats. The first, from 1933, who was a roaming detective who left bat-themed calling cards, and the more popular one from 1939, who debuted around the same time as Batman. Anthony Quinn was a district attorney until one day in court someone threw a vial of acid in his face, which disfigured and blinded him. In the words of Tobey Maguire, it looks very, similar. The attack blinded Quinn, but fortunately a police officer who is dying from gangsters' bullets donates his eyes to Quinn. After the surgery, Quinn is not only able to see normally, but can also see in the dark. He becomes a costumed crime fighter who leaves bat-shaped stickers on his victims, so much like the Spider, no one else is blamed for his crimes. Because he and Batman hit the stands around the same time, both publishers sued each other, but the editor of DC Comics, Whitney Ellsworth, managed to broker an agreement that made both companies leave each other free to publish bat-themed stories, although Batman certainly is the more well-remembered of the two. Number 2. Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. Debuting in January 1938, a full 6 months before Superman, is Sheena, the very first female superhero to receive her own self-titled book. Sheena was an orphan who was raised by an African witch doctor who taught her how to survive and various African languages. She grew up in the jungle and learned to communicate with its animals. She eventually becomes friends with a hunter named Bob Reynolds, and the two protect the jungle from giants, dinosaurs, cults, vampire apes, and everything else under the sun. Sheena was co-created by Jerry Iger and comics legend Will Eisner, and appeared in comics and pulp novels and received her own TV series in 1955 and 2000, and a live-action film titled simply Sheena in 1984. She is also the inspiration for both Tina Turner's stage persona and the Ramones song Sheena is a Punk Rocker. Like many of the pre-Golden Age heroes on this list, she is currently licensed to Dynamite Entertainment, who released new comics about this classic hero. Number 1. Mandrake the Magician. First appearing in newspaper strips in 1934, several historians credit Mandrake, not the Man of Steel, as being the first comic book superhero. He is a stage magician who uses hypnotic gestures to make people see illusions, which he of course also uses to help him fight crime. He has the power to teleport, shapeshift, levitate, and to become invisible. His hat and wand possess great magic and were passed down to him by his father, Theron. He fights both criminals and supernatural threats, aliens, and figures from other dimensions. He's like Zatanna and Doctor Strange rolled into one. Mandrake appeared in comic strips until 2013, but never really had his own comic books, aside from reprints and a few miniseries, one of which was actually released by Marvel. He has guest starred in stories for The Phantom and Flash Gordon, and a series featuring a new character taking up the mantle called Legacy of Mandrake the Magician, which was released in 2020 by Red 5 Comics. He appeared in his own movie serial in 1939, and there have been a few attempts to adapt the character for film and television, but none have panned out. Number 10. Don Juan Quixote. Our number 10 entry is really more of an honorable mention than anything else, but I think he's worth talking about. Don Juan is a character that appears in the original Star Wars comic book series that released only a month after the first Star Wars movie was released in 1977. Don Juan is based off of the classic literature character Don Quixote, and is an old librarian who was obsessed with the extinct Jedi Order and spent much of his time researching them and cataloging antiques from their order. When his Jedi museum is shut down by the Imperials, he loses his mind and starts to think that he is a Jedi whose sacred mission is to travel the galaxy fighting for peace. While most Jedi are hiding and avoiding attention, Don Juan openly wields his yellow lightsaber despite the risks. He is surprisingly effective, surviving multiple injuries and cutting down dangerous enemies like Hellhounds and the villainous Cloudhopper gang. In his greatest act of bravery, he single-handedly stood up to a giant behemoth creature. He has minimal force sensitivity, and the only trick he can pull off is the occasional mind trick, but his willingness to never stop doing what is right proves that he has the heart of a true Jedi. True, he's not an actual Jedi Knight, and certainly isn't a Jedi Master. But he first appeared in 1978, when the writers only had the original Star Wars to go off of. So the term Jedi Master hadn't even been introduced yet. which is actually why I bring him up, because through him we get to see a very different take on what the Jedi are and their history, going off of the very sparse information we were given about them in the first film. Now, on to the real Jedi. Number 9. Ganner Rhysode. Ganner was a Jedi Knight of the New Jedi Order, known for his desire to be a hero and his brash self-confidence and flamboyant nature. He was one of the frontline Jedi during the Yuuzhan Vong War, where he received his signature facial scar, which he kept to remind himself not to be overconfident. While on a mission with Jacen Solo, he held off hundreds of enemy forces by himself, while Solo sabotaged the World Brain. He was slain in the end due to being hilariously outnumbered, and never lived long enough to be an official Jedi Master, but his epic final battle did result in him becoming a legendary and invincible figure in the folklore of the enemy races, known as the Ganner. This is so impressive that I had to include him, despite him technically only being a Jedi Knight. So in other words, he's on this list, but we do not grant him the rank of Master. Which is outrageous. It's unfair! The rest of the Jedi on this list are full-on Jedi Masters. And before you start whining about how the list is about unstoppable Jedi, yet some of the featured Jedi get killed, it's a figure of speech. And if you want to get really pedantic, when Jedi die, they become one with the Force, so really, none of them are ever truly stopped, as they continue on in some form. Moving on.
Okay, at number 8, we've got Sailor Moon. Yes, I said Sailor Moon, fight me. Originally published by Kodansha Limited, Sailor Moon has superhuman powers, a human identity, Usagi Tsukino, and even a superhero alliance known as the Sailor Senshi. So yes, she is considered a superhero, I would say. Okay, originally from a civilization on the moon known as the Moon Kingdom, Usagi is reborn on Earth as the leader of the Sailor Senshi. Her powers are pretty extensive and she often avoids fighting, with most of her powers having attributes of moonlight, love, and healing. But this doesn't make her any less powerful. Her power set is pretty extensive. She manipulates supersonic waves for her attacks, uses powerful kicks, super healing, and uses her tiara as a boomerang, among many other abilities. Throughout the manga, she evolves into more and more powerful incarnations of Sailor Moon, known as Super Sailor Moon, Eternal Sailor Moon, Princess Serenity, and the Neo Queen Serenity, respectively. What makes Sailor Moon so unique and powerful is that she chooses to lead all her actions with love and understanding, even, and sometimes mostly, towards her enemies. She's great! Okay, at number 7 we have X. Part of the Dark Horse universe, X first appears in 1993 by publisher Dark Horse Comics. X has a pretty rocky past and grows into quite a powerful and determined anti-hero. Born an unnamed child, he is experimented on as a baby and abandoned after he is assumed dead in a fire. I know, and you thought your upbringing was tough. He later comes back to life somehow as a teenager with limited to no memory of his past, and he suddenly has powers. But this isn't enough to protect himself from being murdered again. Although this time, it's sorta his fault. He has an affair with a mob boss's wife. When he dies the second time, he comes back again as X, and his goals become to take out all the criminals and corrupt politicians he can get his hands on. This hero's weapons of choice are his pistols, but he's also a skilled swordsman and excels in hand-to-hand combat. I'm honestly rooting for this guy at this point. I mean, he didn't really have any chance at a stable life, so I wish him the best. Not that he needs it. Seems like he can take care of himself. Alright, at number 6 is Plastic Man. Originally published by Quality Comics, this hero was later acquired by DC Comics, but we'll just explore his pre-DC days since that's what this list is all about. First appearing in Police Comics number 1 in 1941, Plastic Man is more of a comedic character, known for his slapstick, offbeat adventures. But his origin actually explores a life of crime for his alter ego, Patrick Eel O'Brien. When he first gains his powers, it's after a failed bank robbery that leaves Eel with a bullet wound, lying on the ground doused in a strange chemical liquid. He's nursed back to health by a monk at a monastery and learns that he's basically become the knockoff Reed Richards. He then goes off in a red and yellow costume with white goggles that hide his identity, and with him is his silly sidekick Woozy Winks, who has been estranged in his own way, but not from his former bank robbing partners, from the mental institution that he'd been ejected from. What's great about Plastic Man is that he isn't interested in justice or prosperity for good, he just wants to be rich. And Woozy Winks' goal is actually just to get back to that institution he was ejected from, or at least the safety of a padded room and a Straightjacket. This story is just a fun time and shows the vast possibilities and uniqueness of independent comics. Alright, at number 5 we've got Invincible. Invincible was originally created as part of the Imagine universe by Imagine Comics. Born Mark Grayson, Invincible is actually the son of Omni-Man, and he basically gains his powers as a hereditary trait from his superpowered father. Invincible often finds himself faced off against aliens and sometimes teaming up with his father, who's also an alien, to get things done. Some of his abilities include super strength, flight, and of course, invulnerability. He has a very eventful run as a superhero, and if I were to cover everything he gets involved in, this section of the video would be 20 minutes long. Basically, this guy fights in a few wars, works for the government at one point, and starts a family of his own later in life. This hero is probably one of the most extensively explored straight-up superhero stories outside of the DC or Marvel universes, and his story is pretty great too. Although I don't think we'd expect anything less from the team that brought us The Walking Dead, would we? Check out Image Comics, they've got some good stuff out there, and it contends pretty well with Marvel and DC. And at number 4, I'm putting Midnighter by Valiant Comics. Started in 1988, Valiant pumped out some pretty good characters and storylines. And they were pretty ahead of their time too, with Midnighter being one of the earlier LGBTQ superheroes. I know Midnighter is part of DC now, but for a while there he was solely the property of Valiant. Midnighter, or Lucas Trent, is experimented on by Henry Bendix, who forms the Stormwatch team of which Midnighter is part. And his abilities are pretty extensive and really cool. He's able to run through almost infinite outcomes of any situation in his mind even before he makes a decision, making him one of the best strategists in the world. And looking at someone as powerful and influential as Captain America, strategy and tactics are always proven to be considered an extremely valuable asset. So I'd argue that Midnighter comes in as one of the most powerful on this list. On top of all that as well, Bendix's fight implants give Midnighter enhanced strength, speed, and durability. And the survival implants offer him enhanced healing, pain tolerance, and environmental adaptation. I just love how useful his powers are, and he just looks so cool as well. At number 3, we've got Shadow Man. Shadow Man is another creation by Valiant Comics, and he's also really cool and quite successful as an indie superhero. And he's a great example of how superheroes don't have to come from Marvel or DC to get their own sprawling franchise. I mean, Shadow Man got his own video game, and Valiant has sold 5.3 million copies of his comics. That's pretty impressive for an indie comic book character. Okay, but what about the actual character himself? So, a young man, Jack Boniface, is born in New Orleans and at a young age is possessed by an extremely powerful voodoo spirit known as Shadow Loa, and his duty becomes to protect the world of the living from the world of the dead. Some of his abilities are basically a fearlessness to evil or danger, super strength and speed, as well as free passage to the world of the dead. What's really cool about this character is that the Shadow Loa, the source of his powers, is a hereditary entity that has followed his ancestors through history. So even when, spoiler alert, Jack dies, his spirit travels back in time and visits the others of his ancestors that had been possessed by Shadow Loa. Then he just wakes up in the present right after his own funeral and keeps going, armed with the understanding of his ancestors' past. It's a pretty cool storyline, and the character design is pretty awesome too. Alrighty, at number 2 we have the one and only Hellboy. We all know this one as well because of how successful the franchise has been. But going way back to 1993, the first appearance of Hellboy was by Dark Horse Comics, and he wasn't really expected to be much as a standalone character. But as his character progresses over the years, his backstory and personality are just so intriguing, and his appearance is so cool that he eventually captures the interest of the world. Hellboy is first introduced to Earth as a baby by Nazi occultists who summon him from hell. He's then raised by Professor Trevor Brutenholm, who starts the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, or the BPRD. So this combination of Hellboy's good nature with a stable human upbringing, mixed with his immense strength as a powerful demon from hell, it makes for a really cool, strong, and fun character. He's got his iconic look with his right arm made of stone, and his demon horns filed off, and that awesome gun he carries around. Some say he even smells like dry roasted peanuts, which actually isn't so bad. Hellboy is just a great character. A demon paranormal investigator who fights and witches. That's a pretty great recipe for story. And it's proven so, with the movies alone having grossed over $300 million. We all love Hellboy, come on. Okay, finally at number 1 we have Shazam, another hero that eventually finds his home with DC. Shazam wasn't always part of that universe. He makes his start with Fawcett Comics in 1939. Yes, this guy has been around since the year after Superman was created. And it's pretty obvious, but worth noting, that his creation is sort of a response to the popularity of DC's Superman. But what's even crazier is that Shazam's original name was actually Captain Marvel. So Fawcett Comics was really trying to make their mark against Marvel and DC to the point where they were actually outselling Superman comics at one point with Shazam. So as expected, Fawcett was taken to court and DC was able to sue them for damages. But beyond the lore of the inception of the character of Shazam, he's also just a great hero. And the fact that he's still around 90 years later with a bunch of new self-titled issues, tons of featured appearances in other DC comics, a hugely successful movie under his belt, and a sequel coming up is a testament to that. So yes, he's now a DC character, but there's a reason why he was such a hot commodity for DC back in the day. And we also know now that there is too a reason he seems eerily similar to Superman, and that's because he was designed that way. Pretty cool.
Dex-Starr has been around since the New Earth continuity and is a Red Lantern from Earth who is, yes, a house cat. Get over it. Dex-Starr was chosen to be a Red Lantern after a really sad story where their owner was murdered and then they themselves ended up a victim as they were tossed into a sack and then thrown off a bridge into the river below. But don't worry, Dex-Starr got saved and became a Red Lantern. Dex-Starr's main goal in life is to find the murderer of his owner and avenge her death. Dex-Starr initially was presented as more of a villainous character, but in the Prime Earth continuity is less villainous and more neutral, I'd say. Sure, he's not against killing, I mean, he is a Red Lantern, but he's also such a good kitty. It's hard to hate him despite all his own hatred for, you know, people out there that do bad things. In the Prime Earth continuity, Dex-Starr also managed to ally with the Justice League Odyssey team, but not the JLA as of yet. Although Justice League Odyssey is also a super cool and weird team that I love, and yeah, you should check them out. Number 9, Harley Quinn. Okay, sure, so is Black Adam right about the fact that Harles will probably end up stabbing you in the back? Maybe. But she also happens to have some of the greatest plot armor of any character around. Over the years, Harley has been evolving, moving from being the Joker's sidekick to a somewhat reluctant anti-hero to a full-on bona fide superhero, or at least, you know, almost a superhero at this point, I'd say. As of now, she's even considered part of the Bat family, an ally the Bats can rely on. So I mean, she might betray ya, but she'd still definitely be a fun one to read in the JLA series. I know I would be more inclined to read some Justice League if Harley was on the team, I'm just saying. And I think eventually as time continues to move forward, she'll become even more and more reliable as a hero. Probably. Maybe. Either way, she'll always be fun to read, so you can't take that away from her, I don't think. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to show some love for us on another platform, you can head on over to Facebook where you can give us a like and a follow, because that's what you do on Facebook. Number 8, Captain Carrot. This might seem like a joke pick, and I mean, it kind of is, but also I actually like Captain Carrot, and I want to read more about his adventures. And one of the ways I can ensure I get more Captain Carrot action would be to get him on the Justice League. I mean, when DC was doing their round robin this year, I was legitimately hoping we'd actually get to see Carrot's team up with Darkseid. How weird and cool would that be? I was so here for that comic. Sadly though, no, not a thing we're getting. Almost no support for Captain Carrot. I am apparently alone in being a Captain Carrot fan. I wave my sad Captain Carrot flag all alone. For those unaware, Captain Carrot is a superpowered rabbit, known originally in the New Earth continuity as Roger Rabbit before being renamed as Rodney in the Prime Earth continuity, for probably the fact, you know, we kind of have a Roger Rabbit that is prominent. He hails from Earth 26, which is populated by other cartoon animals, some of whom join Rodney in his fight against crime as superheroes. And it's a very cartoony reality, so cartoon physics apply, which means that Captain Carrot's also pretty powerful, I'm just saying. Cartoon physics are some of the most powerful stuff you can have in a comic.
Number 7, Animal Man. Thanks to an encounter with some rather strange aliens, Bernard Buddy Baker gained access to the morphogenic field, otherwise known as the Red. This field basically allows Buddy to absorb and use different attributes of nearby animals while still being a human. So he has been able to move his eyes independently like a chameleon, he's been able to ram against a speeding car with the abilities of a rhino, he can fly by tapping into into birds, he's regenerated a whole lost limb by tapping into an earthworm, gained the strength to lift a car by tapping into a spider, and he's ran at 75 miles per hour by adopting the abilities of an ant. But his abilities have done some even more surprising things, like, for example, when a villain cut Buddy off from any nearby animals, he took on the attributes of the bacteria inside that villain's body, allowing Animal Man to duplicate himself, and he can even tap into the attributes of extinct animals like dinosaurs, which has allowed him to punch out a T-Rex and survive being crashed into by a plane by borrowing the abilities of both a Stegosaurus and a rhino. And that's another thing. Over time, he's received power boosts that allow him to use multiple abilities at once, and then to even use the abilities of any animal in the universe, like when he used the power of a Sun Eater, which let him fly across the galaxy in an instant. He's even absorbed the powers of Krypto, Superman's superdog.
Number 6. Batgirl. Batgirl is Barbara Gordon, and while she actually did manage to join the JLA during her time as Oracle, Babs has never been a member of the team, to my knowledge, while using the Batgirl mantle. And honestly, if we potentially see Nightwing join up on the new League, it seems likely we could see Babs as well, who has been seen canoodling with Dick Grayson in his own Nightwing series recently. Batgirl is a member of the Bat family, the daughter of Commissioner Gordon and the protege of Batman, aka Bruce Wayne. And I also feel like she'd have some pretty useful skill sets when it comes to what she can offer the League. As Oracle in the New Earth continuity, she was part of the JLA for a while until Batman was off the team following the events of the Tower of Babel. However, in the Prime Earth continuity, she's only been a part of the Justice League United and the Justice League Reserves. So, yeah.
Number 5. Kongorilla. You remember the Tasmanian Devil. I said that heroes who turn into beasts are cool. William Glenn Morgan is actually cool. He can transfer his mind to a gorilla. He can also change size and has a healing factor. So what's the problem? For starters, he's called Kongorilla. Get it because he's a gorilla and he's from the Congo? Secondly, Congo Bill, yes that was his nickname, was part of a horrible Justice League run by James Robinson. Pile on top of that the fact that in said Justice League run, he was highly underutilized and was completely overshadowed by better named characters, and you've got a short-lived Justice League member who you ain't gonna find on pretty much anyone's favorite list.
Number 4. Green Lantern Joe Moline. While Guy Gardner, Hal Jordan, John Stewart, and Kyle Rayner have been on the Justice League, and I think Jessica Cruz has as well, we've yet to see Joe Moline make it onto the main continuity team. Sure, she was on the supposed future team in Future State, but since that isn't really happening now and is relegated more as a potential future and alternate reality than a likely one for us, we don't have her yet there. John actually did ask Joe to join his proposed Justice League roster recently, but she was too busy to accept that offer. Here's hoping she gets less busy out in space soon so that she can actually join up. After the amazing series that was Far Sector, I need more Lantern Moline in my mainstream comics. Please, give me more Moline.
Number 3. Black Adam. Whether you like it or hate it, Black Adam has been part of the Justice League. Black Adam has essentially the same base power that is possessed by Shazam, who made part 1 of this list, but for Black Adam, his ideologies and ruthless nature mean that he is simply much more capable than Shazam because he does not hold himself back. All we have to do to see how capable Black Adam is to take a peek at 2007's World War III event, or as I like to call it, Black Adam versus literally everyone. Black Adam single-handedly goes up against, beats the snot out of, and even takes the life of some of the combined forces of the JSA, the JLA, Captain Marvel, China's Great 10, the Phantom Stranger, Martian Manhunter, Power Girl, Wonder Woman, Stargirl, Plastic Man, Jay Garrick, several Green Lanterns, and more, all at the same time. And almost no one can take him down for the whole run of the comic. It's absolutely insane. Now, as for his whole inclusion in the Justice League, he was officially a member, but he also wasn't exactly good, which he never really is. We can discuss in the comments, but he is easily one of the strongest people to ever be a part of the Justice League.
Number 2. Power Girl. Power Girl has been on a lot of teams over her time in the comics, but one team she has never been a member of that I would love to see her on is the Justice League. I know she's technically from an alt universe hailing from Earth 2, but that doesn't stop me from loving her as much as I love any other main continuity heroes who are also badass. In fact, don't tell Supergirl, but I actually prefer the alternate Kara of Power Girl to the main continuity counterpart. Sorry, Supergirl. Power Girl is often known for being a member of the Justice Society of America and has even been a part of Fringe League teams like Justice League Europe and Justice League Task Force, but no main league for her. She can even bring her cat Stinky along if she wants. I would not mind. Bring Stinky. Number 1. Nightwing. Dick Grayson is a character who has served on the Justice League following the Blackest Night event, but that was way back in the New Earth continuity. And even then, that wasn't Dick Grayson as Nightwing on the team, it was Grayson as Batman. And this is Prime Earth now, and we still have yet to see Nightwing join the JLA. Now that Batman is gone following the death of the Justice League in Justice League issue number 75, it would be really cool to see Nightwing follow in his mentor's footsteps and even become the leader of the Justice League. This is implied at the end of Dark Crisis issue number 1 by Black Adam, or at least the inclusion, if not leadership, of Nightwing on the future team. But will it happen? Well, we hope so.
Number 10. Animal Man. Thanks to an encounter with some rather strange aliens, Bernard Buddy Baker gained access to the morphogenic field, otherwise known as the Red. This field basically allows Buddy to absorb and use different attributes of nearby animals while still being a human. So, he has been able to move his eyes independently like a chameleon, he's been able to ram against a speeding car with the abilities of a rhino, he can fly by tapping into birds, he's regenerated a whole lost limb by tapping into an earthworm, gained the strength to lift a car by tapping into a spider, and he's ran at 75 miles per hour by adopting the abilities of an ant. But his abilities have done some even more surprising things, like, for example, when a villain cut Buddy off from any nearby animals, he took on the attributes of the bacteria inside that villain's body, allowing Animal Man to duplicate himself, and he can even tap into the attributes of extinct animals like dinosaurs, which has allowed him to punch out a T-Rex and survive being crashed into by a plane by borrowing the abilities of both a Stegosaurus and a rhino. And that's another thing, over time he's received power boosts that allow him to use multiple abilities at once, and then to even use the abilities of any animal in the universe, like when he used the power of a Sun Eater, which let him fly across the galaxy in an instant. He's even absorbed the powers of Krypto, Superman's Superdog. Number 9. Deadman. While I, Vampire, will come back from the dead every time, Deadman is already dead, and therefore pretty much can't be touched except by magical artifacts or magical beings, but even then he can usually give them a good beating. Boston Brand is a ghost. Sorry. Giving him some pretty limited abilities like intangibility, flight, and invisibility, plus a little bit of dimensional travel, which is a bit more useful. But where he truly becomes powerful is in his ability to possess other people. Now, of course, this ability isn't always reliable because there always needs to be some kind of challenge to nerf an ability like this. Batman, for example, is a struggle because of his incredibly strong mind, and there are a lot of strong-minded individuals in comic books. Plus, he can't control people who have already been hypnotized or who are immune to being possessed, like the Spectre. But there are still quite a few extremely powerful characters who he could potentially, and has, possessed. Judy Moon, the Enchantress, Swamp Thing plus the Green, Pantheon, who is an elder god, and the multiversal entity known as the House of Mystery have all been possessed by Deadman. But there's no reason he couldn't possess Superman, Wonder Woman, and a large variety of other heroes and villains. Number 8. I, Vampire. In comparison to most of the other characters who have made this list, Andrew Bennett as a vampire is kinda squishy. Vampires are practically indestructible and can regenerate any damage done by consuming blood. They have superhuman strength, speed, reflexes, stamina, can transform into bats, wolves, rats, and mist, and have enhanced senses and a bit of psychokinesis. But despite that, they have some major weaknesses that pretty much everyone is aware of, with a big one being the frickin' sun, unless they can find a way to temporarily make themselves immune. But for I, Vampire, he has a peculiar ability to eventually automatically revive himself after he is killed, even if he becomes a pile of ash from the sun. He has even survived the end of the universe. Now, this ability is a bit of a mystery even to Bennett himself. When he survived the end of the universe, it was at the will of the Presence, leading some to believe that this may be true in all cases, but that's not actually confirmed. The point here is that he is literally unstoppable because he will always just come back. Is it cheating? I don't know, maybe, but if it is, then our next spot absolutely is cheating. Number 7, Constantine, or Constantine, or whatever you want to say. John Constantine is a really fun inclusion for this list because he is extremely powerful and not powerful at all at the same time. John can wield magic for sure through years and years of learning, training, traveling, but he doesn't have any kind of magical affinity or any kind of beneficial magical family heritage. John relies on actual magic as a very last resort, and the magic he knows how to use isn't anything to scoff at. He has even, very momentarily, been able to hold back Dr. Fate, but using magic comes at a cost and he knows this. So what Constantine prefers is trickery. Lies, deceit, traps, his wits, weapons, artifacts, backup, and calling in favors. John smokes, he drinks, he's in his middle ages, and he ain't in the greatest of health. He can throw a punch for sure, but most people are a physical match for him. But at the same time, he has been able to trick, outsmart, or overpower gods, demons, and angels, Batman, Superman, Darkseid, Swamp Thing, Dr. Fate, the Phantom Stranger, the Spirit of Justice, the Spectre, who's the Spirit of Vengeance, Lucifer, and even the Presence, who is basically DC's version of God. He tricked the Presence into curing John of cancer and granting him divine protection by selling his soul to 3 separate Hell Lords who would start a civil war over his soul, which would spill out onto Earth and into heaven. You don't sleep on this bad-mouthed middle-aged man. Number 6, Aquaman. The ocean is a genuinely terrifying and interesting place. As such, the Atlanteans of DC Comics possess a few advantages over us regular humans. They have super strength, speed, endurance, and durability, all in order to help them survive the mind-boggling pressure at the insane depths of the ocean at which they live. But Aquaman himself is a royal Atlantean, which means that he is a super Atlantean. His strength and durability has allowed him to close the Marianas Trench, go toe-to-toe with powerful foes like Martian Manhunter, Lobo, and Wonder Woman, and tank blasts from Starro. His speed, which is often forgotten about, allows him to swim at 10,000 feet per second, and he can move even faster without the pressure or drag of water, allowing him to dodge bullets and catch lasers. But Aquaman has quite a few other advantages. His control over sea life has helped him in a large majority of his fights, with his underwater allies coming to his aid and helping him do things he probably couldn't do alone, like creating a massive tsunami with whales. His telepathic skill is actually quite impressive as well. Some of my favorite feats include him telepathically controlling a Green Lantern ring, reading the Martian Manhunter's mind without permission, and controlling a space dragon. Now for a while he had a hand that was a hook and then became a magical mystical water hand that could do a whole other level of feats, but I'm out of time, so we're moving on. Number 5, Supergirl. It's funny, when I look up how powerful is Supergirl, I found more stuff about how she isn't more powerful than Superman, as if saying that Kara Zor-El is stronger than Kal-El is insulting their own masculinity. Kara is technically older than Kal is, and she also never learned to hold back, meaning she goes in with 100% effort. This made her appear to be much stronger than Superman when she showed up on the scene, but Superman has been absorbing the rays of our sun much longer, meaning he inherently has more power and more knowledge of how to use it, and his ancestry makes him just better than most other Kryptonians. That's the same reason, or part of the reason, why he was stronger than Zod. So now all the Superman stans can just chill out for a second. Supergirl has the potential to have all the exact same abilities that Superman does, but at a lower level, which still makes her insanely capable and one of the strongest beings in the universe. She has fought Barry Allen pretty successfully, obviously not trying to hurt him though. She put up a decent fight against Wonder Woman, though she still got kinda destroyed, and beat the snot out of Cyborg Superman, and then there is Power Girl, the Earth 2 counterpart of Supergirl, who seems to be even stronger. Number 4, Swamp Thing. Alec Holland was a chemist and botanist who spent most of his efforts creating a chemical formula that could increase the growth speed of plants and even let plants grow in abnormal places. Unfortunately for Alec, the lab he was working in was sabotaged and he passed away in the ensuing explosion and fire while running out into the swamp where his lab resided. Since his body was covered in the formula he created, his consciousness was absorbed by the plant life of the swamp. In a new human-like plant body, Alec rose as the Swamp Thing. Alec was now an Earth elemental and avatar of the green, essentially a god of plants, with unimaginable levels of superhuman strength, durability, and inability to feel pain, regeneration from plant life. He can move at the speed of light, alter his size drastically, shapeshift to allow himself to have other abilities like flight. He can duplicate himself, has chlorokinesis or control over plants, which allows him to teleport through plant life, as well as, and thanks to his connection to the green, he can even move through time and possesses cosmic awareness. He's taken control of all the algae on Earth to remove most of Earth's oxygen in a show of strength. He's taken hits from and even restrained Superman and knocked the wind out of Wonder Woman. Swamp Thing is one of the more interesting heroes that DC has, and he deserves more respect on his name. Number 3, Black Adam. Whether you like it or hate it, Black Adam has been part of the Justice League. Black Adam has essentially the same base power that is possessed by Shazam, who made part 1 of this list, but for Black Adam, his ideologies and ruthless nature mean that he is simply much more capable than Shazam because he does not hold himself back. All we have to do to see how capable Black Adam is to take a peek at 2007's World War III event, or as I like to call it, Black Adam versus literally everyone. Black Adam single-handedly goes up against, beats the snot out of, and even takes the life of some of the combined forces of the JSA, the JLA, Captain Marvel, China's Great 10, the Phantom Stranger, Martian Manhunter, Power Girl, Wonder Woman, Stargirl, Plastic Man, Jay Garrick, several Green Lanterns, and more, all at the same time. And almost no one can take him down for the whole run of the comic. It's absolutely insane. Now, as for his whole inclusion in the Justice League, he was officially a member, but he also wasn't exactly good, which he never really is. We can discuss in the comments, but he is easily one of the strongest people to ever be a part of the Justice League. Number 2, Dr. Fate. I honestly thought Dr. Fate was just a part of the Justice Society and not the Justice League, but I was wrong, and I'll admit that. So, while he should have been in part 1, he is making part 2. Hate on me in the comments if you want, I literally don't care. One of the first magic-wielding superheroes ever, Dr. Fate debuted in 1940, way before Doctor Strange. Technically, Dr. Fate is a name used by the wearers of the Helmet of Fate, which was created by the powerful sorcerer Nabu, along with the Amulet of Anubis and the Cloak of Destiny. When Nabu passed away, his spirit was absorbed into these items, allowing him to live on through his hosts. Now, while Kent Nelson was the first, characters like Inza Kramer, Jared Stevens, Khalid Nassour, and a few others have wielded the powers of Dr. Fate throughout history, inhabiting the Tower of Fate and fighting magical threats. The Helmet of Fate itself grants the hero their vast magical powers, which include reality manipulation, matter manipulation, and time traveling, among many other abilities, plus the knowledge to cast spells that can do even more. And in at number 1, is Lobo. Lobo is basically what would happen if you took Marvel's Wolverine and Deadpool and smacked them together, added a pinch of the Punisher, and then made him as strong and tough as Superman and coated him in Gene Simmons face paint from the band Kiss. Now, as with all characters' feats, we need to take it with a pinch of salt, because this Zarnian in one story was able to take out the New Gods, who are all ridiculously powerful, but in the same story, he was captured and restrained by 3 Green Lanterns. He's been able to knock out Superman, regenerate himself from a pool of blood, has been deemed immortal and banned from both heaven and hell, he can track anyone he has met across the galaxy, is immune to psychic attacks, he's a genius, can break the 4th wall, can possess others, speaks 17,000 languages, can clone himself using his blood, can travel time and space with his motorcycle, and in one story, he literally takes out every single superhero, and man, he punched Santa's head off. That's just messed up. Lobo is almost completely unstoppable, and for some reason, he was very briefly part of the Justice League.
And at 10, Ambush Bug. Ambush Bug is just an all-around terrible character, okay? His real name is supposedly Erwin Schwab, but he has mental problems that prevent him from truly understanding the reality around him, so even his true identity might be no more than a delusion on his part. His origin is also disputed, although the most commonly accepted origin is that Brum-El of the planet Schwab sent his clothes from his supposedly doomed planet, hoping that his wardrobe would survive, only to have it intercepted by a giant radioactive space spider. In the resulting crash, only 2 articles of clothing survived, one being the Ambush Bug suit, which was subsequently found by Erwin. His powers include the ability to teleport at will, which is never explained, and the uncanny ability to annoy everyone around him, even more than me talking about the Hulk on this channel. This guy also started out as a supervillain, and the original pitch, according to the creator, Keith Giffen, the same man who created Lobo and Blue Beetle, was, quote, Bugs Bunny as a villain. And I think that says it all.
Number 9. Tasmanian Devil, the Hulk, Wolfsbane, Beast Boy. Characters that change into beasts are awesome, depending what they turn into. So when Hugh Dawkins turns into a were-Tasmanian Devil, it's just not what anyone was looking for. While it may seem super fitting for the Australian to turn into a marsupial, and while he may look somewhat cool, I don't know. For some reason, he has a giant T naturally appearing on his chest when he transforms, just to make sure you know that he is not a wolf, but specifically a Tasmanian Devil, because if he was a wolf, then he'd just be another werewolf character, and he's way cooler than that. He's a were-Tasmanian Devil. And that's cool, Mom!
Oh, hold on, before we go on with the video, okay? You gotta come over to the new channel, my new channel, Minecraft Nightmare, okay? Look, scary Minecraft all the time. I know it sounds weird, but trust me, it's fun, okay? So come do it. Minecraft Nightmare. Link is in the description, I hope. And it ain't Nort. Some of us love an animal-themed superhero. Others love an animal-human hybrid superhero. However, those who find themselves to be fans of Squirrel Girl might not know about what is probably one of the worst DC equivalents, Nort, with a G. Originally a member of the Green Lantern Corps, which doesn't really mean much since there is literally a Green Lantern that is just a planet, Nort eventually became a member of the Justice League Antarctica, which by name alone indicates how meaningless it is in the overall JL hierarchy. And while his character may have been made as a joke, being stupid and incompetent by trade, it is still surprising just how bad he truly is. I mean, he's a red dog human, for God's sakes. Like, how do you come up with this design? Who thought that this would be a good idea?
Number 7, iVampire. I mean, it's me, so of course I'm going to want a vampire on the team. Of course I am. And what better vampire hero than Andrew Bennett? Basically, I feel like a lot of my ideas for who should actually be on the Justice League, if I were making a Justice League team with people that hadn't been on it yet, are informed by Justice League Dark. I guess I just want the JLD to be declared more mainstream by being our JLA team. Andrew Bennett has also been known as the Lord of the Vampires before, although not all vampires recognize his sovereignty. This doesn't change how powerful he is, even alone as a character. Bennett is immortal, can heal, is super strong and fast, can manipulate and control minds, can shapeshift into animals, and is even skilled at wielding magic. Later on in his history, but still. Also, after the disrespect of dying pretty much immediately in DC vs. Vampires when attempting to warn the heroes, I think he deserves a spot on the JLA just for that injustice. Like, I mean, it's DC vs. Vampires. What do? You kill one of the most prominent vampires straight out of the gate? Ugh, so disrespectful.
And at 6, Blue Jay. Jay Abrams, known as the crime fighter Blue Jay, first appeared in Justice League of America number 87 in February of 1971, and was made as an homage to the Marvel character of Yellow Jacket. However, while Yellow Jacket had an explanation for his powers, Blue Jay didn't. He could shrink to 7 inches tall for reasons, and he could grow wings for more reasons. Seriously though, these reasons are never explained. And having no explanation is worse than the yellow sun giving him power. Having no explanation is worse than nanotech, for God's sake. Having no explanation is worse than Catman from Fairly Odd Parents. Blue Jay is just Hawkman with a stupid mystery, and that's not something I tend to enjoy, okay? It's freaking ridiculous. The lack of explanation as to how this man has the powers he does, and why, is ironically enough the reason he's on the list.
Number 5, Supergirl. It's funny, when I look up how powerful is Supergirl, I found more stuff about how she isn't more powerful than Superman, as if saying that Kara Zor-El is stronger than Kal-El is insulting their own masculinity. Kara is technically older than Kal is, and she also never learned to hold back, meaning she goes in with 100% effort. This made her appear to be much stronger than Superman when she showed up on the scene, but Superman has been absorbing the rays of our sun much longer, meaning he inherently has more power and more knowledge of how to use it, and his ancestry makes him just better than most other Kryptonians. That's the same reason, or part of the reason, why he was stronger than Zod. So now all the Superman stans can just like chill out for a sec. Supergirl has the potential to have all the exact same abilities that Superman does, but at a lower level, which still makes her insanely capable and one of the strongest beings in the universe. She has fought Barry Allen pretty successfully, obviously not trying to hurt him though. She put up a decent fight against Wonder Woman, though she still got kind of destroyed, and beat the snot out of Cyborg Superman. And then there is Power Girl, the Earth 2 counterpart of Supergirl, who seems to be even stronger.
In at 4, Godiva. Dora Lee is the British superhero Godiva and a member of the Justice League International. And her power? Prehensile hair. Sometimes called psychokinetic hair, prehensile hair is a term used to describe the ability of some characters to move their hair in impossible ways, kind of like a tail. Not only can the character move their hair, but they can also use it to wrap up opponents, knock out armored thugs, and contend with larger enemies. But you know what? That isn't even enough for me to consider her a decent Justice League International member, okay? Because like, what? Basically, this is Rapunzel so blasted out that she whips her hair back and forth like Willow Smith and thinks that she's controlling her hair with her mind. Her power reminds me of how like every single time you're trying to cuddle up with a girl, but like no matter what, you always have hair in your face and it's never comfortable because there's at least one strand of hair is always comfortably on your face, but you're not comfortable. The hair is comfortable, but you're not.
Number 3, Queen Nubia. Nubia may have just had her coronation in the comics, becoming the queen of the Amazons officially, but she could still maybe carve out some time for the Justice League. Or you know, at least if she doesn't have time now, perhaps later she might be able to get away for a bit and join them. After all, Hippolyta and Wonder Woman have both been members of the team, so I'm wondering where Nubia's invite is. Nubia, like her sisters, is a fierce warrior and a skillful leader. We also learned she enjoys playing music to pass the time as well in the preview for The Adventures of Young Diana, as seen in the Wonder Woman 80th Anniversary 100-page Super Spectacular. What I'm saying is, Nubia rocks.
And ultimately, in at number 2, Batman. Yeah, that's right, I'm calling out your glorious Batman, so pipe down for a second, okay? It's my turn. While being one of the founding members of the League, Batman has had some serious trust issues that bring down the team. Mostly I'm talking about his whole various plans to bring down the members if they end up going rogue thing. An understandable concept in theory, but I mean it doesn't really go over well considering how Ra's al Ghul steals the plans and then puts them into action. While yes, he isn't as bad as some of the other characters on this list in their contexts, in this context, he really does screw up. I mean, if they weren't the protagonists and their deaths wouldn't result in the loss of millions of dollars for DC, they would not have been able to stop Ra's from wiping out every League member and just taking the whole League off the board. Let's be realistic here, okay? Batman may be good at what he does, but he's not a good teammate. Batman is amazing at whatever he's doing at the time, unless that thing is being on a team, in which case he kinda sucks. And it's, you know what, he's one of the worst Justice League members because of this. Get mad all you want. Deep down, you know I'm right.
Number 1, Mistech. More like mistake. Look guys, I know it was a bad joke, okay? Everyone here told me it was a bad joke. I'm trying to do better. I will do better, okay? I'm sorry. Everyone loves a comeback story. When Mistech, a woman named Seong Barclay, first came on the scene, she was a pretty low-tiered villain. She wore the armor of her late father, which gave her a masculine-looking physique while in the suit, and she had energy-projecting abilities. Eventually, Martian Manhunter recruited Mistech for his Justice League task force, which, I mean, how could she say no? Maybe if she took into account her claustrophobia. Superheroing doesn't necessarily bring you into confined spaces, that's fair. But when there is a possibility of being put into a spacecraft and going off into space, that's when things get a little problematic. And it's what they did when the Justice League Task Force had to go into space and Mistech panicked. She shot a hole in the craft and got sucked out into space, ending her short-lived membership on the Justice League Task Force. I almost feel bad for her. Not really, almost. And in at number 10, Shazam. With the mystical power of 6 gods, Shazam is not just said to be the physical equivalent to a baseline Superman, but he can almost definitely take on Superman himself, as the Man of Steel has no resistance to magic. Shazam has actually proved himself to be faster than, and also able to knock out Superboy Prime, who is one of the most powerful versions of Superman ever, able to shake reality with punches, that kind of thing. But this isn't a list about people who can take on Superman. Batman has stated that Shazam is one of the most powerful beings on planet Earth for a reason. He has KO'd the god of evil and father of Darkseid, Yuga Khan, with one punch. And speaking of gods, Shazam has been able to defeat the DC versions of Ares, Atlas, and Thor, all of whom are incredibly powerful gods. While he is astoundingly strong, fast, and durable, Shazam's true potential, I think, comes from his natural affinity for magic, which can potentially allow him to do almost anything, which I know to be true because of another magic-wielding leaguer. In at number 9 is Superman. We are kicking off this list with what everyone would expect to see, because it's just not interesting to have him any lower. That's my reasoning and I'm sticking to it. Superman is the baseline. He is what we compare almost all other DC superheroes to when we are talking about power. Superman at his base level can destroy planets, tank hits from just about anyone including Darkseid himself, and he has a whole plethora of abilities that some are even forgotten when writers use Superman in a story. But the thing about Superman is that he almost has no upper limit. If this guy wants to, he will fly into not only our sun, but multiple suns throughout the universe to drink up their radiation in order to gain a massive power boost. He's been able to break the barrier between dimensions, and in some stories he has existed until the very end of the universe, splitting himself into multiples so that he can be a hero for the entirety of that universe, although that wasn't technically canon. The point is, while he is arguably without equal because of the fact that he has no real limit, there are a few members of the League who could give him a run for his money. Number 8 is Wonder Woman. As 1/3 of DC's Trinity, Wonder Woman has to make this list. Where Superman is a being of raw power, that, plus his outstanding moral character, are what makes him so unstoppable. But then we have Wonder Woman, who is almost equal in terms of strength, speed, and durability to the Man of Steel, but she's leagues and bounds above the guy in terms of her skill. In a melee fight, she will outmatch pretty much anyone, and she will be quicker than almost anyone, including Superman, because she doesn't even need to think when fighting. She's just a natural. I don't think we can actually show it, but my favorite Wonder Woman panel, which I think comes from Injustice, is literally her snapping Superman's arm using her elbow while he screams in pain, and Harley Quinn is in the background like rooting her on. It's fantastic. But even in regular continuity, she's been able to last a hot minute against a mind-controlled Superman who was not holding back, and she could have even taken him down if she wanted to. And then we talk about Death Metal, where Wonder Woman got powered up to the point she was taking on beings of cosmic levels of power using a magical chainsaw. Then she went on to Valhalla, of all places, but even managed to get out of there and come back to Earth. And that's the other thing. Wonder Woman has access to not only magical artifacts, but she was gifted with magical abilities by the goddess Hecate, or however you pronounce that. And those powers were leagues above Zatanna's own magical prowess. And we've already talked about how powerful magic can be. There isn't much on Earth that can really stand against Wonder Woman. But coming in at number 7, Zatanna. A lot of people sleep on Zatanna, and that's a mistake. Zatanna is part of the Homo Magi race, giving her a genetic talent for magic that makes her one of the greatest magic users in the multiverse. Zatanna was born with magic, but she's not limited by that. With the addition of learned magics, Zatanna can cast a whole multitude of spells that allow her to do things like travel dimensions, summon objects and beings, perform telekinesis and advanced telepathy, redirect and return attacks, mess with the weather or even time of day, manipulate her own size or transform into basically anything, become intangible, and manipulate magical versions of the elements. But that's all the basic stuff. She can cast spells that can manipulate reality, alter the molecular structure of objects, and move forward, backwards, and freeze time itself. And that's not even getting into what she could do with black magic. Sure, she may not be as physically capable as some other characters on this list, but she has the potential to make child's play of most of them despite that fact. If you guys are enjoying this list so far, make sure to drop a like and subscribe here at Top 10 Nerd. And make sure to let us know any topics for videos you want to see in the future. And at number 6 though is Green Lantern. I think a lot of the time Green Lantern is just thought of as the guy who can make breakable green light constructs, but that is just a huge oversimplification. To prove my point, all we gotta do is look at some of the things done by the most powerful Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. Hal will is essentially pure willpower, which is what powers his Green Lantern ring. This means he has incredibly intense levels of strength and durability, but anything he does with his ring is just better than any other lantern. And that's before he even forged his own ring, which no other Green Lantern has ever done. Hal has such control over his ring that he has been able to pull a spaceship out of the gravitational pull of a star, but he has also used the ring to attack nanites inside his own bloodstream. He can destroy entire planets, one-shot KO Superman, hit people so hard that it warps reality, and then as most people know, he destroyed every single member of the Green Lantern Corps. Now after creating his ring, he was even more powerful than that. He literally started to become a being composed of will, which doesn't even really make sense, but means he can't really die. He obliterated Sinestro, who was powered up by Parallax. He moved so fast he broke the Speed Force barrier, tanked a massive blast from Mogo, who was a Green Lantern that's a planet, and Mogo was being boosted up by hundreds of other lanterns when that happened. And he created hard-light constructs that were actually alive and couldn't be beaten by the Green Lantern and Sinestro Corps combined. Absolutely insane. In at number 5 is Martian Manhunter. John Johns is another character that people really sleep on, but this guy is insane with his level of ability. There's a panel from the New 52 when Martian Manhunter is fighting off all the members of the Justice League at the same time. Let me break this down. With his left hand, Martian Manhunter is displaying his shapeshifting abilities, turning into a massive spiky club and whacking away both Cyborg and Hal Jordan Green Lantern. With his right hand, I think it's safe to say he's showing off his super strength, as he's got a power grip on the Lasso of Truth, and I'm assuming he's resisting its power, which is just a whole feat on its own. Behind him is Aquaman, who's like jabbing at Johns with his trident, but this is just going through the Martian Manhunter and is showing off his intangibility powers. And then we got Superman, who's flying around the fight at a decent distance away, while Manhunter is using his heat vision to keep him there. And then the funniest part is Batman doing absolutely nothing, just picking up the Flash, who seems to have just been knocked down. It's almost a perfect display of his abilities, but leaving out a handful, and one of the biggest. John is the most powerful telepath on Earth, and one of the most powerful in the universe. Martian Manhunter has been called the most powerful being on the planet, and he's at the top of the list of people that Superman is afraid to fight. That's enough said right there. Number 4, Orion. Orion is a new god and the son of Darkseid, and as such he's not only incredibly conflicted, but also incredibly powerful. He has many forms and he has many abilities. Orion is repeatedly praised and stated to be a warrior with, quote, skill and ferocity second to none, which allowed him to become the greatest warrior on Apokolips while he was undercover there. He is so astronomically strong that he has held open the hand of the god of strength and might, who had been threatening creation and ripping holes in reality with that strength. And he has stood against and beaten a sun-charged Superman one-on-one, something no one else in the Justice League was able to do. His durability is so powerful that he can tank star system destroying explosions. Orion is so fast that he moves with the speed of thought, and he's so smart that he was able to create the Genesis box, which can destroy and rebuild a universe. He can grow and shrink to any size, move through time, has a healing factor as if he actually needed one, has incredible super senses, and wields the Astro Force, which does a hell of a lot on top of everything, including matter and energy manipulation. But as an example, it once sealed holes in reality and knocked out Superman in a single shot. And that's all just Orion holding back and not using his true power called the Source of the Beast. And yet, he flies around space on a stupid looking scooter. And at number 3 is The Flash. Okay, look, I gotta tell you now that I'm actually gonna be talking about Wally West here. It's pretty well known that Wally is even faster than Barry Allen is, and I'd argue that he is the fastest speedster anywhere. In Flash Forward, Wally somehow went, quote, faster than the Speed Force, which means he went faster than the source of his own super speed. That makes no freaking sense! He can outrun Superman and Barry Allen. He outran the Black Flash, which is basically death, taking it to the end of the universe where it just ceased to exist. He has saved the Titans, who were all over the US, and he did it in 6.25 seconds. And my favorite point, there was a time that he saved the whole population of a city from a nuclear explosion as that explosion was going off, and he did it at like 1 billion times the speed of light. How does that even make sense? It doesn't. That's your answer. Wally West is insane. He can manipulate the Speed Force to make time basically irrelevant to himself, and he might as well well just be classified as a god. Number 2, Firestorm. Where do we start with Firestorm? The main version of the character is Ronnie Raymond, who was fused with his professor Martin Stein. But there are a lot of other versions of Firestorm, a lot of whom are either one person or different fusions of people. It's annoyingly complex. The character, as you might guess, has pyrokinetic abilities plus durability, flight, reflexes, and super strength, but the character's main thing is that they can rearrange the molecules of matter. Now this ability is obviously incredibly OP, and it would simply take one story to make him completely god level, but for the most part, writers kind of misuse him. Potentially, this character could transform entire planets into whatever he wanted. With his powers, Firestorm's done some pretty godlike things. For example, Firestorm manifested a pink bunny mascot suit out of thin air around the villain's Skull Crusher. He's turned explosives into a jack-in-the-box and a cement truck into a giant teddy bear. It's hilarious, but like low-key, absolutely insane. On a way less hilarious note though, he also turned a girl into salt when he was resurrected as Deathstorm, and in Doomsday Clock, Firestorm accidentally turned a crowd of Russian protesters into glass. But outside of matter manipulation, Firestorm has had some impressive feats, like surviving the nuclear meltdown that originally created the hero and absorbing all the excess radiation, and then another time, Firestorm survived a straight-on nuclear explosion. An alternate version of the character called Deathstorm was able to absorb and capture 3 different Justice League teams into its Firestorm matrix, allowing the crime syndicate to take over Earth for a period of time. And in Infinite Crisis, Firestorm was able to seal a multiversal rift. Now in case you haven't noticed, we have kind of moved away from physically unstoppable characters to characters that are just pure science fiction gods. In at number 1 is Captain Atom. Nathaniel Atom was transformed into Captain Atom in the 60s after being semi-forced to participate in a potentially fatal experiment, piloting a device encased in an alien metal. Now the experiment didn't kill him. What it did do was atomize him and bond the alien metal to his flesh, giving him superpowers. Captain Atom's powers are like Firestorm's powers, but boosted to a whole different level, and with many more side abilities. Matter manipulation, energy manipulation, time manipulation, energy absorption, telepathy, spatial manipulation, quantum manipulation, force field creation, magic and mind manipulation, and control of the quantum field are all on this guy's roster of abilities. These powers have let him perform some insane feats like creating and destroying whole universes, fighting Superboy Prime, easily defeating a team composed of multiple versions of himself before absorbing them and creating an explosion powerful enough to destroy a universal space-time continuum. Captain Atom is potentially the most powerful superhero, certainly the most powerful who is also a member of the Justice League. Number 10, Constantine, or Constantine, or whatever you want to say. John Constantine is a really fun inclusion for this list because he is extremely powerful and not powerful at all at the same time. John can wield magic for sure through years and years of learning, training, traveling, but he doesn't have any kind of magical affinity or any kind of beneficial magical family heritage. John relies on actual magic as a very last resort, and the magic he knows how to use isn't anything to scoff at. He has even, very momentarily, been able to hold back Dr. Fate, but using magic comes at a cost and he knows this. So what Constantine prefers is trickery. Lies, deceit, traps, his wits, weapons, artifacts, backup, and calling in favors. John smokes, he drinks, he's in his middle ages, and he ain't in the greatest of health. He can throw a punch for sure, but most people are a physical match for him. But at the same time, he has been able to trick, outsmart, or overpower gods, demons, and angels, Batman, Superman, Darkseid, Swamp Thing, Dr. Fate, the Phantom Stranger, the Spirit of Justice, the Spectre, who's the Spirit of Vengeance, Lucifer, and even the Presence, who is basically DC's version of God. He tricked the Presence into curing John of cancer and granting him divine protection by selling his soul to 3 separate Hell Lords who would start a civil war over his soul, which would spill out onto Earth and into heaven. You don't sleep on this bad-mouthed middle-aged man. Number 9, I, Vampire. In comparison to most of the other characters who have made this list, Andrew Bennett as a vampire is kinda squishy. Vampires are practically indestructible and can regenerate any damage done by consuming blood. They have superhuman strength, speed, reflexes, stamina, can transform into bats, wolves, wolves, rats, and mist, and have enhanced senses and a bit of psychokinesis. But despite that, they have some major weaknesses that pretty much everyone is aware of, with a big one being the frickin' sun, unless they can find a way to temporarily make themselves immune. But for Eye Vampire, he has a peculiar ability to eventually automatically revive himself after he is killed, even if he becomes a pile of ash from the sun. He has even survived the end of the universe. Now, this ability is a bit of a mystery even to Bennett himself. When he survived the end of the universe, it was at the will of the Presence, leading some to believe that this may be true in all cases, but that's not actually confirmed. The point here is that he is literally unstoppable because he will always just come back. Is it cheating? I don't know, maybe, but if it is, then our next spot absolutely is cheating. Number 8, Deadman. While Eye Vampire will come back from the dead every time, Deadman is already dead, and therefore pretty much can't be touched except by magical artifacts or magical beings, but even then he can usually give them a good beating. Boston Brand is a ghost. Sorry. Giving him some pretty limited abilities like intangibility, flight, and invisibility, plus a little bit of dimensional travel, which is a bit more useful. But where he truly becomes powerful is in his ability to possess other people. Now, of course, this ability isn't always reliable because there always needs to be some kind of challenge to nerf an ability like this. Batman, for example, is a struggle because of his incredibly strong mind, and there are a lot of strong-minded individuals in comic books. Plus, he can't control people who have already been hypnotized or who are immune to being possessed, like the Spectre. But there are still quite a few extremely powerful characters who he could potentially, and has, possessed. Judy Moon, the Enchantress, Swamp Thing plus the Green, Pantheon, who was an elder god, and the multiversal entity known as the House of Mystery have all been possessed by Deadman. But there's no reason he couldn't possess Superman, Wonder Woman, and a large variety of other heroes and villains. Number 7. Faith. When the original Justice League was teleported thousands of years into the past, a new Justice League was formed, and Faith was one of those premier members. Only she was more like the member. See, the problem with Faith was that she solved pretty much any problem. She would almost always show up with some new power that was exactly what the League needed at the time. When she was part of a Black Ops team before the Justice League, she was literally nicknamed the Fat Lady. She ain't fat. It was a reference to the saying, "It ain't over till the fat lady sings," because literally whenever she showed up, the fight was over. So then what's the point of having a team at all? Fans found her boring, and she was basically just a plot device. A waste of a powerful character, if you ask me. Number 6. Aquaman. The ocean is a genuinely terrifying and interesting place. As such, the Atlanteans of DC Comics possess a few advantages over us regular humans. They have super strength, speed, endurance, and durability, all in order to help them survive the mind-boggling pressure at the insane depths of the ocean at which they live. But Aquaman himself is a royal Atlantean, which means that he is a super Atlantean. His strength and durability has allowed him to close the Marianas Trench, go toe-to-toe with powerful foes like Martian Manhunter, Lobo, and Wonder Woman, and tank blasts from Starro. His speed, which is often forgotten about, allows him to swim at 10,000 feet per second, and he can move even faster without the pressure or drag of water, allowing him to dodge bullets and catch lasers. But Aquaman has quite a few other advantages. His control over sea life has helped him in a large majority of his fights, with his underwater allies coming to his aid and helping him do things he probably couldn't do alone, like creating a massive tsunami with whales. His telepathic skill is actually quite impressive as well. Some of my favorite feats include him telepathically controlling a Green Lantern ring, reading the Martian Manhunter's mind without permission, and controlling a space dragon. Now, for a while he had a hand that was a hook, and then became a magical mystical water hand that could do a whole other level of feats, but I'm out of time, so we're moving on.
Number 5. Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing is Alec Holland, or more specifically, Swamp Thing was Alec Holland before he was dissolved in essence in a swamp, with his consciousness living on and merging with the swamp to create something new, an avatar of the green known as Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing is crazy powerful, and I don't think they get enough attention and respect from comic book fans in general. He's always been a character that I found fascinating, and I think as such that he would make a great addition to the Justice League team. Sure, Swamp Thing has been on the Justice League United team, Justice League Dark, and is part of the Justice League Reserves, but he's never been a member of the full-blown JLA, and I think there is a lot that he would have to offer on that team. Also, like I said, I do kind of just want a Justice League Dark to be the JLA.
Number 4. Swamp Thing. Alec Holland was a chemist and botanist who spent most of his efforts creating a chemical formula that could increase the growth speed of plants and even let plants grow in abnormal places. Unfortunately for Alec, the lab he was working in was sabotaged and he passed away in the ensuing explosion and fire while running out into the swamp where his lab resided. Since his body was covered in the formula he created, his consciousness was absorbed by the plant life of the swamp. In a new human-like plant body, Alec rose as the Swamp Thing. Alec was now an earth elemental and avatar of the green, essentially a god of plants. With unimaginable levels of superhuman strength, durability, and inability to feel pain, regeneration from plant life, he can move at the speed of light, alter his size drastically, shapeshift to allow himself to have other abilities like flight, he can duplicate himself, has chlorokinesis or control over plants, which allows him to teleport through plant life, as well as, and thanks to his connection to the green, he can even move through time and possesses cosmic awareness. He's taken control of all the algae on Earth to remove most of Earth's oxygen in a show of strength. He's taken hits from and even restrained Superman and knocked the wind out of Wonder Woman. Swamp Thing is one of the more interesting heroes that DC has, and he deserves more respect on his name. Number 3. Maxima. Maxima. You had the potential. You see, Maxima had a power set that put her on par with the likes of Superman. She was also an alien from the planet Almerac. The problem with Maxima doesn't come from her powers or anything like that. No, see, the problem with Maxima is that her planet's population is dwindling, and her #1 goal is to find a man to do the repopulating with. Seeing Superman as the perfect mate, she goes after him only to be turned down, leading her to join a Superman revenge-based team and then join the Justice League to try and seduce him. Surprisingly, it didn't work, and she would turn her sights on Captain Atom and then Amazing Man. And then she bit the dust thanks to Brainiac. She could have been someone. She could have been a contender. Number 2, Dr. Fate. I honestly thought Dr. Fate was just a part of the Justice Society and not the Justice League, but I was wrong, and I'll admit that. So, while he should have been in part 1, he is making part 2. Hate on me in the comments if you want, I literally don't care. One of the first magic-wielding superheroes ever, Dr. Fate debuted in 1940, way before Doctor Strange. Technically, Dr. Fate is a name used by the wearers of the Helmet of Fate, which was created by the powerful sorcerer Nabu, along with the Amulet of Anubis and the Cloak of Destiny. When Nabu passed away, his spirit was absorbed into these items, allowing him to live on through his hosts. Now, while Kent Nelson was the first, characters like Inza Kramer, Jared Stevens, Khalid Nassour, and a few others have wielded the powers of Dr. Fate throughout history, inhabiting the Tower of Fate and fighting magical threats. The Helmet of Fate itself grants the hero their vast magical powers, which include reality manipulation, matter manipulation, and time traveling, among many other abilities, plus the knowledge to cast spells that can do even more. And in at number 1 is Lobo. Lobo is basically what would happen if you took Marvel's Wolverine and Deadpool and smacked them together, added a pinch of the Punisher, and then made him as strong and tough as Superman and coated him in Gene Simmons face paint from the band Kiss. Now, as with all characters' feats, we need to take it with a pinch of salt, because this Zarnian in one story was able to take out the New Gods, who are all ridiculously powerful, but in the same story, he was captured and restrained by 3 Green Lanterns. He's been able to knock out Superman, regenerate himself from a pool of blood, has been deemed immortal and banned from both heaven and hell, he can track anyone he has met across the galaxy, is immune to psychic attacks, he's a genius, can break the 4th wall, can possess others, speak 17,000 languages, can clone himself using his blood, can travel time and space with his motorcycle, and in one story, he literally takes out every single superhero, and man, he punched Santa's head off. That's just messed up. Lobo is almost completely unstoppable, and for some reason, he was very briefly part of the Justice League.
Number 10, the Dawnbreaker. The Dawnbreaker was so unstoppable that he managed to destroy his entire world. This version of Bruce Wayne hails from the Dark Multiverse, from Earth -32. Here, Bruce's story goes as anticipated in the beginning, with him being just a child when his parents were gunned down by Joe Chill. However, young Bruce in this tale is instead granted a Green Lantern ring following his parents' deaths, and ends up joining up with the Green Lantern Corps. The oath of Green Lanterns, though, does not necessarily resonate with Bruce, with him only seeing his ring as a means for him to get his revenge. Despite the fact that the Green Lantern's rings normally cannot be used to kill, Bruce pours his inner darkness, his void of emotion, into this ring, corrupting it and thereby willing it to kill, and even using it to temporarily raise the dead. He goes on to kill all of the criminals of Gotham, face off with the Green Lantern Corps and successfully kill them and the Guardians of the Universe, and of course destroy the entire world. Well, his entire world. A world. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like? Number 9. Helena Wayne. Helena Wayne goes on to take up the Batman mantle on Earth 2. The New 52, Earth 2 that is. This version of Helena Wayne was helping her father to fight against an army of parademons as his Robin when she was transported to another world. Now on this Earth 2, Helena Wayne is actually the daughter of Bruce, so yeah. Despite the fact that her father did not survive that battle, Helena and Supergirl both did, being transported to the Prime Earth continuity. While here they initially were also unstoppable in their search to find a way home, at least initially. Despite the fact that Huntress, aka Helena Wayne, the daughter of Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, would eventually give up on this dream, she and Supergirl would also eventually be returned home to Earth 2. Once there, Helena would go on to also take up the mantle of Batman. Number 8. The Batman. I think one of the most unstoppable Batmen I've seen recently, despite his youth, would be our Year 1 Batman from the now Elseworlds DCU movie The Batman. In this film, Batman is played by Robert Pattinson and is presented as a version of Bruce who is still kind of struggling to find his footing in the city of Gotham as a hero. In fact, many people actually fear and revile Batman at this point, GCPD included, who, other than Jim Gordon, are not really on his side. However, despite being less experienced in comparison to some of the older, more established versions of the character, I would say that Batman, against all the odds here, is still impressively unstoppable. This likely has to do with the fact that he is not only attempting to prove himself as an ally and force of good to the city and its people, but also kinda to himself, trying to find a purpose in a world that he seems to have become increasingly disconnected from. In the end, Batman realizes that hope above all else is one of the most important things, not fear, and we see him begin to make his way down the path to becoming the hero that Gotham needs. Number 7. Jason Todd. In Battle for the Cowl, Batman is believed dead, and a final message is passed on to the Bat family members. Among those summoned to hear Bruce's final words is Jason Todd, former Robin, sometimes villain, and all around just a pretty complex character and vigilante. With Bruce absent, Jason believes this is his opportunity to prove himself and take up the cape and cowl. As Batman, Jason is relentless, not shying away from bloodshed or killing the criminals he comes up against, and dons a heavily armored suit and the former mask of Michael Lane's Azrael when he was the Bat Devil mask. This version of Batman is not against using guns, making him even more deadly, especially when he obviously shoots to kill. Jason Todd's version of Batman managed to best Nightwing, Tim Drake, and Catwoman in battle, successfully defeating all of them, although in the end, Nightwing did return and managed to defeat Jason, but this was also in part due to Dick gaining the upper hand in their final fight. Well, I mean, not their final fight, because, you know, this is comics, so there's a lot of stuff that happened after this, but just in regards to this specific story, I mean. Number 6. Dark Knight Returns. Of course, we have to have Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller's dark, futuristic take on an older Bruce who chooses to return from retirement and don the cape and cowl once more. I mean, he is kinda the definition of unstoppable, is he not? This version of Batman ends up literally leaving retirement as an old man to come back and kick some butt. And he does a pretty freaking great job, I gotta admit, even almost beating Superman before seemingly dying of a heart attack, but even then, not really. So while Superman seemingly wins the ultimate and famous fight between the two of them, it's revealed that in the end it may have all just been part of Bruce's elaborate plot, meaning that as always the detective also wins in the end, especially because Superman's kinda like, yeah, I know he's still alive, it's all good. Number 5. Dick Grayson. Well, not quite as adept and skilled as Batman is, Nightwing has the range of skills to excel as Bruce's replacement, which is what happens in the New Earth continuity after Bruce is believed to have been killed in a fight against Darkseid. Dick Grayson ends up taking up the Batman mantle in his adopted father's absence, believing that Gotham needs Batman and that it would be unwise to let it be known that the original Batman is gone and dead. While Nightwing has many accomplishments as Batman, I more wanted to discuss him because I believe that not only is Dick Grayson a great option when it comes to the Batman legacy, but that recently, even outside of that, he's definitely proven himself to be unstoppable as a character, with or without the Batman mantle attached to him or even affiliated with him. Lately, he's been excelling as Nightwing, the protector of Bloodhaven, and is returning once more to lead the Titans, who will become the protectors of Bloodhaven, and obviously the protectors that Bloodhaven is desperately needing right now. A symbol of hope for a place that is sometimes presented as being even more corrupt than Gotham. However, it should also be noted that before this, Dick was also offered the opportunity to lead the Justice League, following the events of Dark Crisis, with Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman all seemingly coming together to decide that Nightwing was the best candidate to lead a new league in their absence. Of course, even though Nightwing was flattered by this, he chose instead to bring the Titans back and return as their leader. Or well, I mean, the Titans never really went anywhere, but he was like, we're gonna do Titans now instead. Ba-ba-ba. Number 4. Batman Red Sun. Batman Red Sun is definitely one of the most unstoppable Batmen around. He hails from Earth 30, an alternate world where Superman's Kal-El instead fell to Earth and landed in Soviet Russia, growing up there and becoming a Russian hero as opposed to an American one. Batman is a hero who actively fights against the Soviets, seeking revenge for the death of his parents, who were murdered by Stalin's police. Batman eventually is manipulated into taking on Superman himself, and while he does fail to kill Superman, Batman still makes an impressive attempt there. Especially impressive when you consider that this Batman, like so many others, is completely unpowered. And despite not physically winning that fight, choosing to die rather than allow himself to be captured in the end, Batman still manages to reveal the truth about the people that Superman works for, turning Superman against them and thereby getting his own revenge, despite not being alive to see it fully realized. Batman also lives on after the initial man's death that represented him, inspiring others in Russia to take up the mantle in his place and continue the fight for justice. So although the original guy that was Batman in that reality is dead, Batman still lives on and becomes unstoppable because legacy. Number 3. God of Knowledge. While still technically the main continuity Batman we currently have in the DC universe, and not in the traditional sense an alternate as in someone from another Earth or an Elseworld story, as we counted Dick Grayson before, who is also in the main continuity, I would like to present this version of Batman who represents a specific time in Bruce's life when he happened to gain the powers of Mobius, or at least the power of Mobius's chair. This was a device and tech that was initially used by Mobius, aka the Anti-Monitor, but given to the new god Metron by Mobius, before Batman ended up taking it for himself during Darkseid War. The chair grants whoever sits upon it vast knowledge, and also allows whoever pilots it to travel through time and through to various dimensions. In other words, this made Batman pretty insanely unstoppable. During Darkseid War, various heroes and villains took on new identities, becoming not new gods in terms of, you know, the group of cosmic beings, but new gods in terms of them becoming gods, which was new gods, not new gods. Number 2. Batman in Bethlehem. In an alternate future, Damian Wayne ends up becoming Batman, and everything goes pretty crazy as a result. He takes up the mantle following the death of Dick Grayson, who ends up becoming Batman after Bruce retires. Following the death of his adopted brother Dick Grayson, Damian sees killing as kind of the only way to deal with criminals like the Joker, who ended Dick's life in this case. However, Bruce disagrees, refusing to let Damian take up the mantle of Batman initially, and eventually kicking him out of the Batcave and Bat family as a result of his actions. Eventually, Damian would earn his father's forgiveness and his respect once more, and go on to take up the mantle, continuing to be Batman even after both Bruce's and Alfred's deaths. However, he would once again be seen as a killer, a much crueler and less forgiving version of Batman in the future. Damian even goes so far as to sell his soul to seemingly the devil, and in the end, Gotham ends up the victim of a nuclear attack in a harsh and chaotic apocalyptic futuristic world. Still, Damian never gives up, and even goes on to renegotiate his bargain with Simon Hurt, who is suggested to be the devil here. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. laughs. Batman Who Laughs is hands down one of the most despicable and unstoppable Batman we've ever encountered, I think, in the comics. What makes him so unstoppable? Well, he's kind of an unreal combination of Batman and Joker blended together, and I would say it's that makes him so interesting, unique, and ultimately unpredictable and unstoppable. I mean, think about it. He has all the logic and skills of Batman, but the level of cruelty and off-the-wall thinking of the Joker. When he sets his mind to something, usually the Batman Who Laughs ends up on top and gets what he sets out to get. And I know what you're going to say, but Amanda, hold on a minute. Wasn't he defeated during Dark Knight's death metal? Yes, he ultimately was, but at the same time, look at all he accomplished before that. I mean, this is the guy who was able to take down one of the most powerful villains out there, Perpetua, who is older seemingly than time itself, known as one of the Hands of Creation, and is the mother of both the Monitor and Anti-Monitor, as well as, you know, the World Forger. So that's pretty wild to me.